Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto has a powerful dojutsu. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Naruto felt the sphere of condensed chakra in his hand collide with the lightning edge clasped in Sasuke's. The maelstrom of energy swirled in rage against the piercing edge, throwing aside the razor-sharp point of the jutsu, holding both users in place as they forced more and more chakra into their attacks. Suddenly, the balance shifted. Naruto felt something twitch in his head, and Sasuke gave his last desperate shove. The Chidori lanced through Naruto's chest right above the heart, severing his aortic artery, cutting off his precious supply of oxygen from his body. Pain coursed through his body with the crackling electricity, throwing Naruto into convulsions. His writhing body slammed his own Rasengan into his stomach, directly over the seal which held the Kyuubi at bay. The entire valley flashed with a fiery red chakra, and both adversaries were hurled to opposite ends. Sasuke caught himself with his level 2 curse seal wings, while Naruto unceremoniously slammed into the canyon wall, leaving a massive dent in the stone before falling to the ground. Sasuke drifted to the ground and stood staring at Naruto's fallen form, smirking slightly. "Baka, I was always better than you, and now that I have power to match the Kyuubis, I will become powerful enough to destroy my brother. You said I was traveling into darkness. But then, why is it that I can only see the light of my future?" Sasuke felt the level 2 seal fade from his body as he jumped across the river and stood over the blonde. "I won't allow you to stand in the way of my ambition, Dobi. If you want me to return to your pitiful village, prove to me that your way is better. Hate me, Naruto, like I hate my brother. Live your life in a way that would make your friends sick of you. A way in which people would fear you, and I would finally respect you." Sasuke turned to leave, limping quietly away from the scene of his last battle as a Konoha shinobi. Naruto bled in silence on the ground, and finally, darkness took him. All he could feel was the scratched forehead protector in his hand. "Kakashi, Naruto is nearby, but he's weak, we have to hurry," Pakun exclaimed to the masked ninja. Kakashi didn't bother replying, but instead forced an extra burst of chakra through his legs and leapt into what he had thought was a clearing. Unfortunately for Kakashi, the Valley of the End was not really a clearing, more like a gaping chasm in the earth. Holy End, who put this huge hole in the ground? Kakashi spun around in midair, attaching several shuriken to some ninja wire and hurled them at the tree he had overpassed. He caught himself and was able to latch onto the canyon wall with chakra and walk down it. The sight that greeted his eyes was rather disheartening. He could tell a battle of epic proportions had been fought here. Every nearby tree had been uprooted and sent downstream, or into the rock walls. Even the canyon itself was not left uninjured. Large cracks and craters decorated the floor and walls, bearing witness to the massive power which had been used here. Incredible. What were they thinking? Kakashi mused. As Kakashi pondered this issue, he wandered around, trying to spot a flash of blinding orange that would signify Naruto. He had already tried to sense his chakra, but the place was so saturated with it that it was impossible to discern any one signature from another. When he finally spotted Naruto, he almost cried out in pain. The boy had a massive hole in his chest, and his clothes were in tatters, yet this was not the worst of his injuries. Kakashi could see Naruto's bare stomach and realized that something was wrong with the seal. The normally constant spiral looked as if someone had taken a blender to the mix, throwing strange contortions and curves into the seal, altering its 4-8 points into an indistinguishable mess. "Oh Kami! Naruto!" Kakashi yelled. Naruto didn't respond to his exclamation, but lay there, silent, yet somehow still alive. Kakashi tenderly lifted the boy and clutched him to his chest. Without another word, he launched himself to the top of the valley and headed back towards Konoha as fast as possible. Kakashi waited nervously in the waiting room of the Konoha Hospital OR, doing one of the many things that would have made half of Konoha pass out from surprise and fear, not reading his book. In truth, Kakashi's copy of Icha Icha Paradise had been soaked in Naruto's blood, and was therefore unreadable. Reading usually helped calm him. Before he could ponder more on this, the door to the OR swung open and Jiraiya stepped out, looking exhausted, in both body and spirit. Kakashi stood quickly. "How is Naruto?" Jiraiya collapsed in the seat next to where Kakashi had been sitting and closed his eyes for a second before responding. Naruto is fine physically. Kakashi heard the reluctance in the man's voice, but what? When his Rasengan hit him in the stomach, it dealt some serious damage to his chakra pathways, and the seal holding the Kyuubi in. Kakashi stared at him in horror. You mean, the Kyuubi is breaking free? No, nothing like that. If it could, it would have already escaped. The seal is not deteriorating. In fact, before I even went to work on it, it seemed to be healing itself. It seems as if Naruto's chakra pathways have incorporated the seal into themselves, creating more tenketsu and a longer thread, in which more chakra is stored. If that were not surprising enough, I also found numerous other spiral-shaped chakra pathways throughout his body. It seems as if Naruto has been reinforcing the seal unconsciously throughout his body, creating smaller gates through which he can let more of the Kyuubi's power out without losing control. Then what's the problem? Well, when the seal was damaged, a burst of the Kyuubi's Yukai was able to escape into his system, and because of the reorganization of the seal he cannot return it to the Kyuubi, so his body has absorbed it. Kakashi looked at him in shock. Naruto is becoming a demon? Jiraiya sighed and rubbed his eyes. Not quite. I'm not quite sure what this could do to Naruto, but I'm fairly sure that he is going to. Before Jiraiya finished his statement, a loud shout was heard within the OR. Both ninja reacted instantly, hurling themselves through the swinging doors and into a sight that would burn itself into their minds forever. Naruto Uzumaki, the #1 hyperactive and most determined ninja in all of Konoha, was sitting up in his bed, one eye clawed out by his own hand, and the other soon to join it. The offending eye flashed in colors more brilliant than the rainbow. Kakashi slammed his hand onto the Hokage's desk the next day, after spending the previous evening restraining an incredibly strong Naruto. What happened to him? He yelled at the woman sitting behind the desk. Tsunade grabbed Kakashi's hand and squeezed, forcing him to sit in the chair which he had just risen from. Calm yourself, Kakashi. No one here cares more about Naruto's health than I do. Do you think I would have called you away when I left if I didn't think you would be fine? Besides, we need to talk about Naruto's condition. You speak, I don't know what to think at the moment. It's simple really, Naruto just suffered a revelation. Kakashi blinked, then felt his rage kindle. I just watched my student tear out his own eye. That is not what I call a revelation. Tsunade tapped him on the head, once again back into his chair. Listen very closely, Kakashi. From what Jiraiya and I have been able to gather, the effect of having the Kyuubi's Yukai absorbed into his body has changed Naruto's genetic makeup. And why would that make him pull his own eyes out? Well, according to what I've been able to find, Naruto has developed a bloodline. Wait, that can't happen. You're born with bloodline, you don't just gain one. Yes, but all bloodlines began with demons and the human children of unions between demon and human. When Kyuubi's chakra ingrained itself into Naruto's body, it literally tore a hole in his DNA and inserted itself in, at which point it began to change and mutate to accommodate itself to his body and spirit. At which point his bloodline activated, waking him from his slumber and causing his episode. Kakashi leaned back, stunned by this revelation. Naruto? A bloodline? It seemed impossible that something like this could happen, but here Tsunade, the greatest medic nin of the time, was claiming that it had. There was only one thing to ask now. But what kind of a bloodline would make a person tear their own eyes out? I saw his other eye flashing different colors, but I don't think that's reasonable cause to destroy your own body. Ah, and there is the interesting thing. From Naruto's rantings and a thorough brain scan, I think I found the fundamental nature of his bloodline. It is the ability to see truth. It's basically an overstimulation of the area of the brain which can detect lies, to such an extent that you can literally see through any lie. I believe this is the reason for Naruto's reaction. The mask. Yes, Naruto has lived his whole life beneath a mask of happiness, and in a way, has even been able to convince himself of the lie in which he is living. But now, with his bloodline, the truth of the situation was made all too clear to him, and it was just too much, so he sought to destroy the source of the problem. And now he'll be a one-eyed shinobi forever, like me without my Sharingan. Actually, that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. Naruto's episode has been labeled a S-class secret, and you are not to reveal it, or any information about his new bloodline, under any circumstances. Kakashi, who thought that he had had his share of surprises today, was again knocked off balance. Why? Apparently this bloodline is adept at protecting itself. The eye that Naruto tore out regrew in a matter of minutes, just as a small amount of the Kyuubi's chakra spiked. So it uses the Kyuubi's chakra as well? There's no telling the limits of this new bloodline. Think about it, Kakashi. We have in our hands probably the most powerful dojutsu in the history of the world. Created from a union of the Kyuubi and Uzumaki Naruto, the possibilities are limitless. But the most amazing thing is, I don't think it's done evolving yet. What? Kakashi thought his head was going to implode any second now. Naruto's body has been changing over the past few hours, adapting. The process has slowed, but it's definitely continuing, and as far as I know, will continue for as long as he lives. Konoha is now the sole holder of the world's only ever-changing bloodline. You sound as if we're going to use him as a weapon. Kakashi accused, his eyes narrowing. I don't like it any more than you do. But other people will. The council, Root, even other villages will attempt to use him. I'm only pointing out the obvious. Of course, I myself want him for my research, I won't deny that. But I still love him like a brother, and I won't let anyone take him away from me because he is changing. Kakashi nodded. The Hokage had acknowledged Naruto more quickly than any person, even himself. This made him feel slightly ashamed for doubting her. But with this new power, he was not certain what would happen to Naruto. Only time would tell. Tsunade finally stood up. Now, I'm going to bed, you should too. Here is your mission from here on out. Tsunade handed him a scroll and left. The weight of it seemed almost unbearable. Kakashi-san. This mission issued by the blah blah, yada yada. Let's see. Here we go. As the most trustworthy leading expert in dojutsu, you're to aid Uzumaki Naruto in the developing of his own power. Any resources you desire are at your disposal, and any aid from any shinobi that you should require will be immediately provided by the show of the mark sealed within this scroll. You are not to disclose the contents of this message to anyone, or the nature of your mission to non-vital personnel, namely, those who are not directly aiding you, or are considered untrustworthy, in the developing of said ninja's eyes. A list of notable dojutsu users had been compiled below. Those higher on the list are more devoted to Uzumaki Naruto, or less likely to give away this secret. Kakashi unsealed the mark and stuck it in his pocket, then took a look at the list. He found a large number of Hyugas on the list, along with some other less notable people, whom all possessed some form of dojutsu, whether it be as simple as the ability to notice things easier, or powerful enough to kill with their very eyes. They were very low on the list. Surprisingly enough, the first three names were as follows. Hyuga Hinata, Hyuga Neji, Hyuga Hiyashi. I suspected Hinata and Neji, but Hiyashi? Tsunade must be off her rocker. Well then again, I suppose Hiyashi is devoted to Konoha enough to put aside his prejudices in the face of gaining more power for it. I don't see much help from the Hinata sector. Yet, looks like my first choice of Byakugan users is Neji. I think I'll try a Sharingan approach first. This new ability seems to be closer to it than the Byakugan anyway. Kakashi closed the scroll and burned it with a mid-level fire jutsu, assuring that it, and the sensitive information contained within it were kept secret. He had already memorized the list. Well, Naruto, looks like we're going to have lots of fun. Fear was all he felt. Naruto sat curled up in a ball on his damp hospital bed. His sheets and clothing had been soaked and replaced several times by the cold sweat that poured from his body whenever he had an episode. He remembered the pain, so much pain when he had an attack. Tsunade had come to him the previous day to comfort him. He remembered it all too well. Flashback. Naruto screamed and fought against the straps holding him to the bed, feeling the thick leather stretch and tear under his tremendous strength. 1 snap, 2 snap, 3 snap, 4 snap. The straps tore loose from the bed and Naruto hurled himself to the ground, pounding his head against the floor, spraying crimson blood over the sterile ceramic tiles. Even as they cracked, them crumbled to dust under his assault. Crack. Naruto felt his skull break. A long hairline fracture appeared on the white surface that peeked out from under his blood and sweat-drenched locks. Before he could inflict more agony on himself, Naruto felt strong hands pull him into a warm embrace, restraining him, yet comforting him. He buried his head in the comforting presence and felt a familiar soothing feeling of healing chakra pulsing through his head. The physical pain in his head vanished and the torment in his mind seemed to subside as he looked up at his savior. Tsunade, his friend, sister, and mother was holding him, holding his fears at bay like a guardian angel. As he stared into her soft brown eyes, a sudden realization hit him. She loves me. Naruto clung to her like child, before he finally felt the attack fade, and the pain subsided. Seeing Naruto's eyes fade back into their cerulean blue, Tsunade carried him to the bed and laid him down. Naruto felt the world begin to fade into the blissful silence of sleep. Tsunade turned away and headed out, but before she was able to close the door behind her, she heard a small voice call out in farewell. "I love you too, Oba-chan." She couldn't stop the tears that welled up in her eyes. End flashback X. That one occurrence had brought solace to his mind, and every time he had another attack, all he had to do was think about that one fact that he absolutely knew was true, and he could control himself. The pain never faded though. Whatever was happening to him was intense, unlike any genjutsu he had ever been under. No pain had reduced the effectiveness of it, and he had tried several times to halt his chakra flow, but nothing worked. He remembered Jiraiya trying to explain something to him, but he had had another attack, and that talk had failed. Before Naruto could think any more, he heard a knock at the door. He slowly unraveled himself and looked blankly at it. It creaked open as the man on the other side sensed Naruto's chakra slightly rise. Naruto sighed in relief as the masked man walked in and ruffled his hair. This felt normal, it felt good. Kakashi took a seat and cleared his throat. "How are you, Naruto?" Naruto thought about this for a moment before replying, "Kakashi, what's wrong with me? Why am I having these attacks?" "Because Naruto, everything you are is collapsing." "What?" "Naruto, when you battled Sasuke, you hit yourself in the stomach with a Rasengan, correct?" "Yeah, Naruto, when you did that, some of the Kyuubi's Yukai escaped from the seal and was trapped outside, and eventually, absorbed by your body." "Yeah, and it happens all the time." "Not like this, Naruto. A certain reorganization of the seal forced your body to absorb the power completely, whereas your body would normally send an enormous amount back into the seal." "Naruto, you've developed a bloodline." "A what?" Naruto yelled, "Don't pull a fast one on me, Kakashi. I know that bloodlines can't be made." Kakashi reached for his book, paused, then didn't pull it out. The implications of this action caused Naruto to understand the gravity of the situation. Before he could interrupt any more, Kakashi tossed him his orange jumpsuit. "Come on, we have training to do." Naruto sat in the lotus position in the middle of training ground 13, forming the ram seal and trying to focus his chakra. His encounter with the Kyuubi's Yukai had rearranged the configuration of his chakra coils, and therefore, his ability to mold chakra. "Focus, Naruto, you need to get your chakra control back up or you'll keep having these flashes. Now, run up the tree," Kakashi said. Naruto jumped to his feet, still holding the ram seal, and sprinted at the tree. The ground underneath his feet impressed slightly as the chakra flowing from his foot gave him an extra push off. Naruto's foot touched the tree. He focused even more, trying to make the concentration of chakra just right. Before he had a chance to think any more, he heard an ominous groan. His eyes widened as a crater more than 3 feet across exploded out of the tree, hurling him to the far end of the training ground in a rain of splinters and spiraling chakra. Kakashi chuckled slightly, then calmly walked over to his injured student. He had suspected this might happen. "Okay, Naruto, what went wrong?" he asked, smiling. Naruto growled and got up. "I think I applied too much chakra, but I'm sure I wasn't. I did the exact same thing that allowed me to complete the exercise before." "Well, not exactly. You see, the nature of your chakra pathways has changed. When your body absorbed the Kyuubi's Yukai, the pathways in your body increased exponentially, and they got larger. Jiraiya has informed me that if Hyuga looked at you, they would probably just see a being of solid chakra. This increase in chakra pathways has literally more than doubled your chakra capacity, and, because of the configuration that they were made into, you literally form 1,000 tiny whirlwinds when you focus chakra into any part of your body." Naruto blinked, looked at his hand, blinked again, then held it out, focusing his chakra. Before Kakashi could yell a warning, Naruto formed a Rasengan. Or more to say, he tried to form something like a Rasengan. Dozens of tiny balls of chakra flew from his hand, slamming into and ripping through most of the trees within a 50-meter radius. Kakashi saved himself from the carnage by using Kawarima with a log on the other side of the training ground. Splinters and sawdust rained down on Naruto from above as the miniature Rasengans continued their work. Several trees crashed to the ground around him and he collapsed into a sitting position, holding the hand he had formed the Rasengan with. The hand itself was bleeding profusely through the many holes which had formed in his skin. Before he could cry out, he felt the numbing sensation of the Kyuubi's regeneration take hold and repair the wounded flesh. The Rasengans dispersed and Naruto was left, staring at the carnage which he had just caused. "Oh, my, Kami!" He dazed. Kakashi appeared next to him, whacking him on the head with his orange book, Baka. "Think before you act. Anyone less skilled than a Chunin would have died in that attack." Naruto rubbed his head and glared at Kakashi. "You could have told me that would happen. I didn't know what would happen if you tried to use any jutsu. Especially that one. Now run up the tree." Naruto huffed and formed the ram seal, focusing the chakra into his feet once again and running at a tree. Once more, he was blasted off. This went on for more than an hour before Kakashi left. Naruto kept blasting himself off the tree. 6 hours later, Naruto grimaced as he looked at the chakra burns on his feet. Apparently, his tenketsu hadn't adapted to his new chakra configuration and the amount he could put out. The burns healed in about 2 minutes and Naruto began training again. He had made it halfway up one of the mighty trees before it had collapsed from the strain of his insane chakra, and fallen to the earth. He laid back on the ground and stared up at the tree, wondering about the effects this would have on him. His prized technique, the Rasengan, was now almost useless to him other than a large genin grinding machine, and he had no idea what his other jutsus would be like. "Aha, I know how to find out." The world tensed in silence, waiting for his words. "I'll just use them." Several birds in a faraway country collapsed, causing a great warlord to go to war and conquer many nations, after which his descendants ruled with benevolence and harmony. Strangely enough, this empire collapsed due to the low caloric count found in the breakfast cereal of the army, thus causing them to fall asleep when the barbarian invaders came, who all ate bacon and eggs for breakfast. And toast. Naruto focused his chakra and formed the ram seal. Henge. Blue chakra erupted from the ground and an enormous puff of smoke formed in the clearing. The result was a very messed up looking imitation of the tree which he had been trying to transform into. If you can imagine a child's imitation of a tree on paper, then crumple that up, feed it through a grinder, reconstitute it into a liquid form, then force it through an angel hair stringer, you might get close to the sheer ugliness of the object. The tree let loose a mighty yell of pain and puffed back into Naruto, who was clutching his warped body in pain. The transformation had actually hurt. Nothing like that is supposed to happen. Why is this happening to me? Naruto stared around bewildered at the destruction this minor jutsu had caused. The ground around him had been ripped into by the sheer amount of chakra he had expelled to perform this simple technique. He would have cried now if he didn't have another jutsu left to test. The Cage Bunshin. Naruto steeled himself for the effects of this jutsu and formed a crossed seal in front of his body. Cage Bunshin. Naruto felt the wind ripple around his body, becoming completely saturated with chakra, then explode. The force of the winds expelled knocked over several trees and left huge gashes in the ground, not to mention the huge pillar of smoke which puffed into existence. Naruto's mouth dropped open as the smoke cleared. Before him stood one clone, just one. Yet, it was perfect. He couldn't tell exactly why it seemed more real than any other clone he had made, but this one seemed to be the clone. Before he could demand answers of the single figure, it held its hand out, motioning him to silence, before opening its mouth. Shinko Cage Bunshin. Naruto stared, blinked, and stared again. What? The other Naruto smiled and held out his hand. Naruto reached out and took it, too stunned to resist him. As he touched the clone he felt a strange surge go through his body, and he felt a sense of calm fall over him. "What are you?" Naruto asked. The clone smiled once again, and opened its mouth. "I am you Naruto, not a cheap imitation of you, I am the you that is. I am your true clone. Now get back up, we have to train." Naruto saw the determination in his clone's eyes and felt his spirits lifted. "So this is what it feels like to talk to me." The clone charged at the closest tree, Naruto leading slightly behind him. The clone dashed up the side of the tree, leaving a wake of broken bark and splintered wood. Naruto followed, his footsteps making slightly less of an impression on the wood. "It's like I'm instantly learning everything from what my clone is doing. This is incredible." The Naruto clone reached about 2/3 of the way up the tree before being blown off by an uneven application of chakra. It sailed through the air and flipped, landing on a branch opposite of the tree, watching Naruto with eyes that flashed through a brilliant array of colors. Naruto felt an itching around his eyes and in the back of his head. All the confusion, questions and ideas floating around in his head vanished. He felt pain spike in his mind as he felt his bloodline activating, the pain of the past, the voices of the present, all shouting. He snarled and pushed them aside, and they obeyed. The pain shrank and he suddenly realized what he was doing wrong. It all makes sense. If I just apply chakra like this, reversing the spirals, they'll straighten out and sink deeper into my body, leaving straight pathways in my feet. His feet burned for a second and his next step didn't even leave a crack in the wood. Naruto shouted out in joy and sprinted all the way to the top and jumped off, flipping backwards and landing next to his clone. They both looked satisfied at the tree before opening their mouths in unison. Kaigen, hey, that was my line, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto yelled. BS, I am you idiot. The clone yelled. They both tumbled out of the tree, trying to get the upper hand over the other. They landed in a bundle and the clone vanished in a puff of smoke. Kakashi smiled under his mask as they two Narutos hit the ground. He knew Naruto would figure out the tree climbing exercise eventually, but not this quickly. He suspected it had something to do with his new bloodline, considering the fact that Kakashi had seen him and the clone brandishing multi-hued eyes at each other. However, that clone technique was very interesting. It could be incredibly useful in the future. Like the Cage Bunshin, it allows the user to learn quicker, but what else can it do? And those eyes. I think I'm out of my league now, I'm going to need help. Excellent work Naruto. Kakashi shouted, strolling over to him as he lay in a pained bundle on the ground. Not only did you pass the first chakra exercise, but you also managed to activate your bloodline without going into a seizure. Tell me, how did you do it? I don't know, I guess I just pushed aside all the thoughts that were coming to my mind and focused on the thing at hand. I think the voices are getting weaker. Naruto explained. That makes sense, you're like a person coming to terms with reality Naruto. Your mask is being torn apart by your own mind. It's only natural that you should try to reject that. I think I know the first step to removing this handicap though. Come on, I've made some arrangements. What kind of? You'll see, it has something to do with ramen. Naruto followed Kakashi, unaware that his eyes were still cycling through their strange weave of color. They arrived at Ichiraku's ramen a half-hour early for Kakashi's surprise, so they sat down and Naruto started on his first bowl, while Kakashi nursed a saucer of sake, not drinking, just looking into it, and covertly watching his pupil with the protean eyes. He wondered what Naruto was thinking. Aw man, these noodles are awesome. Each one has its own unique flavor. I can practically taste the love and effort that was put into making them. It tastes so good. As you can see, Naruto was making good use of his bloodline for examining noodles. Meanwhile, in Naruto's brain the area in charge of detecting lies was going nuts. It sent tendrils out into his perception, linking with his senses, enhancing his perception to new levels. It was also busy, sorting his memories and breaking down the mask that he had held for so long. It removed the jading from the facts that his teachers had told him, and stripped down his shinobi teachings to what they truly were. Yet, at the same time, it stripped away his inhibitions about those who were truly his friends, showing him that they were in fact comrades who could be trusted. But also showing him the depravity of his treatment towards them and those who he has failed. This war was fought silently by one who was devoting all his energies to protecting the blonde from himself. In Naruto's mindscape, a lone figure stood in the middle of the sewer. His true clone. He held the darkness at bay and nurtured the various other beings that were flourishing in Naruto's mind. Very soon Naruto, we shall be together. All of us. We are nothing more than we are you, and you are us. All of us. He stood, watching over the pulsing light in Naruto's mind, and awaiting the shadows that would come from it. Hyuga Neji, Hyuga Hinata, and Amino Iruka certainly made a fine trio, marching down the streets of Konoha as if on mission from the Hokage herself. Of course, their task was not an enviable one. They were each being forced to go to Ichiraku Ramen at the same time as Uzumaki Naruto. It would be a rush for the door when food was over. Naruto, for most of his life, had not paid for a single bowl of ramen at the stand, but instead, tricked other people into paying for him. If people had realized this amazing skill, they might have changed their view about his shinobi abilities. However, to those that noticed, it was nothing but a large headache and a considerably larger dent in their wallets. Meanwhile, Naruto was consuming enough ramen to put a dent in Kakashi's 401k plan, if he had one. Shinobi don't really have 401ks considering the fact that the death rate on a shinobi is high, and there is no point in saving money for retirement. But that's beside the point. After his 25th bowl, Naruto had begun to slow down. That was when Kakashi's 3 guests showed up. Hinata made a beeline for the stool farthest from Naruto, in the hopes that she would be able to evade his eyes, while being able to keep a discreet eye on him. Neji sighed and dropped into the stool next to Hinata, while Iruka was forced to take the seat next to Naruto, who was still too absorbed in his food to notice the change in scenery. They each ordered a bowl, then sat waiting for Naruto to notice anything. Naruto's lack of perception had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he couldn't hear anything around him. In fact, with his bloodline active, he could pretty much pick up anything going on around him. The problem is, all that supernatural sense was being put to use in examining every molecule of the ramen he was eating. Thus, Naruto had a very good meal, which could have killed him if anyone who even knew not to hold a knife by its blade had wandered along. Of course, Mr. Ichiraku would have warned Naruto of any would-be assassins, if for nothing more than the fact that Naruto was his main source of income. Yet, even Naruto's highly focused senses can be diverted by the infamous cough. Iruka did such. Naruto, slightly annoyed at this distraction, looked over and paused. His eyes doubled the pace of their shifting as his bloodline took in everything about Iruka, what he knew about him, his suspicions, even the scar on his face told a few stories to Naruto's eyes. That scar didn't come from a blade, Naruto said. Iruka stared at him, opened his mouth, then closed it again. Before he could even think about a response to that, Naruto tackled him to the ground. "Thank you so much, Iruka-sensei," he yelled, hugging the man fiercely. Iruka, still in shock from Naruto's statement, just sat there blinking. Neji and Hinata stared at the blonde as well, wondering what in the world he was doing. "You're welcome?" Iruka said uncertainly. Naruto didn't reply. You see, when Naruto looked at Iruka, his bloodline had cycled all the information about the man through his brain, picking apart his true intentions and motives for all the things he had done. After a few seconds, it had come to the conclusion that Iruka really did care for him, probably more than anyone other than the third Hokage. Naruto had always lived with the doubt that Iruka was merely kind to him on an order, or to get close to him for a kill. But now he knew, and it made him the happiest person in the world, or Konoha at least. The happiest man in the world was at the moment eating some corn chips, nacho cheese flavor. But other than that, Naruto was the happiest man around. When Naruto had looked at Iruka, his bloodline had gone into overdrive because of the amount of information it was trying to process, and now it was slowing down, only cycling through a color every 4 to 5 seconds. His mind was still working on his memories, but at a slower pace than it had before. This spared Neji and Hinata the power of Naruto's bloodline when he finally let go of Iruka and turned his eyes towards them as he and Iruka slowly got up. "You're not going to hug me, are you?" Neji asked, slowly edging away from Naruto. "What? Why would I hug you?" Naruto asked. "I'm not sure, but considering your condition, and your previous actions, I think it's safer if I stand over here and prepare a Kaden just in case." Naruto snorted, "Suit yourself." Hinata noticed Naruto's eyes and gasped, "Naruto, your eyes." Naruto got a confused look on his face, then caught a glimpse of himself in Neji's headband. He stared. Naruto had never seen his bloodline active before. He thought that his eyes might bug out like the Byakugan, or maybe the would go swirly. But this was interesting. He blinked several times, but that didn't seem to change his eyes back. Kakashi. How am I supposed to deactivate this bloodline?" Kakashi stared at him for a second. "What, you're not doing anything?" "No, I'm just sitting here, it's doing stuff on its own." "Wait, Naruto has a bloodline?" The three newcomers questioned, minus Hinata, who thought it. Kakashi sighed and grabbed Naruto. "Alright. Let's go, Iruka, you are dismissed. Don't tell anyone about this, you two, follow me." Iruka shrugged and disappeared in a swirl of leaves, leaving the rest of them in the middle of the street. Kakashi showed his seal to Ichiraku and told him to send the bill to the Natural Disasters Division of the Hokage's office, then led them back to the training ground. Neji and Hinata immediately began analyzing Naruto like a thing to be analyzed. Neji activated his Byakugan and got an even greater shock. "What do you see, Neji?" Kakashi asked as Hinata also activated her Byakugan. Neji glanced at Kakashi, then focused his vision on Naruto. "It's incredible. Naruto's chakra pathways are everywhere. There must be at least 2 kilometers of them total running through his body, and the number of tenketsu. If I didn't know it was Naruto, I would tell you that I was looking at 10 people standing behind each other. What is this? That Neji is an S-class secret of Konohagakure. You are not permitted to reveal this information to anyone. Also, I need you to inform Hiyashi that it is a criminal offense to perform the Byakugan around Uzumaki Naruto." Neji didn't bother to respond, but continued to examine Naruto. His chakra spiraled in hypnotic patterns throughout his body. The pathways were clearly skewed though, as if it had been put together hastily, and he could tell that they were still growing. Yet, the most remarkable thing about his chakra was that when it reached his head it traveled through an even more complex series of pathways, changing color and texture as it went. He could clearly see larger concentrations in certain areas of the head, and he definitely noted the change from blue chakra to a myriad of other colors in the eyes. Before Neji could ask any more questions, Kakashi spoke up. "Alright, enough of that. I called you both here because I need your help with Naruto's training. Like I said before, this is an S-class secret, so no telling your friends. The Byakugan has a more advanced perception ability than the Sharingan. I believe that the Kaigan has the ability to bring that to a whole new level, as exhibited by its ability to see the truth, among many other abilities which it will manifest as it continues to evolve." Neji and Hinata listened with rapt attention as Kakashi explained the theory behind Naruto's new bloodline while Naruto tried to deactivate his bloodline. After several minutes Kakashi finished his explanation. Naruto had made no progress whatsoever. Hinata and Neji examined a disgruntled Naruto as he sat on the ground pouting. "First, I'm going to need your help realigning Naruto's chakra pathways. His incident has left him without the ability to use any jutsu whatsoever. With the aid of the Kaigan I believe this should take a relatively short amount of time. Naruto, I want you to do whatever it is you did during tree climbing exercise, except this time with your hands. Hinata, Neji, you're each going to take one hand and use your Jukin to push the pathways back into place." Naruto held out his hands and the 2 Hyugas stood by each one, Hinata going beet red at the thought of touching Naruto's hand. Naruto focused the chakra in his body towards his hands, then felt for the way it should be. His Kaigan flashed through another set of colors, analyzing the problem and creating a solution. He closed his eyes for a second, then refocused the chakra he had sent flowing through his hands, then stopped it. Naruto waited for a second, then slowly every organ in his body cried out in pain. Naruto, with the aid of his Kaigan, had literally stopped the flow of chakra through his body, permanently. Naruto screamed in pain and fell to the ground, clutching his chest, heart trying to beat wildly, but failing. Neji and Hinata stared in disbelief. It was like all of the chakra in Naruto's body had just suddenly stopped flowing. Although this was helpful for dispelling illusions normally, the standstill of chakra in Naruto's body seemed to be longer than just the instant required to notice any genjutsu in the area. Kakashi had felt something go wrong the instant Naruto had tried to fix his hands. The new Naruto constantly emitted a tremendous amount of presence, mainly due to his larger chakra reserves, and partially, Kakashi suspected, to the Kaigan. However, when Naruto had focused his chakra, Kakashi had instantly felt that presence fall away, as if a great weight were being lifted from his shoulders. But the most frightening thing of all was the fact that Kakashi could feel Naruto's chakra potential building rapidly, even as he rolled on the ground in pain. Thinking quickly, he snatched the other 2 genin under his arms and sprinted. In terms of speed, Kakashi has been considered quicker than the eye can see, but even his great speed would not be enough to escape what was to come. Before Kakashi could get 50 meters away from Naruto, he felt the air around him surge. Acting quickly, he dove and threw the 2 genin under a large root nearby, grabbing on himself before the onslaught hit. Naruto felt all of his considerable chakra reserves seize up, then explode. Several dozen of Naruto's tenketsu broke as chakra erupted from his body in a highly pressurized spray. Along with the chakra also went a fair amount of blood, spraying a bloody mist all over the clearing. Naruto screamed in agony as he felt his body being torn apart from within by the tsunami of chakra whirling through it. The Kaigen flew through a series of colors, stabilizing the roaring chakra through Naruto's body and focusing it towards his hands. Naruto felt the tearing pain in his body flow directly to his hands, and pressure began to build. With a terrible ripping noise, Naruto's hands were stripped to the bone. Naruto cried out in agony, his eyes fixed with horror on the spirals of chakra holding the bones of his hands together. The Kaigen flared brilliantly and turned red as it channeled the Kyuubi's Yukai into Naruto's body, directing it towards his hands. In a matter of seconds the red chakra replaced the blue which had been holding his hands together. Layers of muscle grew into place and within another few seconds, Naruto's hands were as good as new. Naruto curled up in a ball, tears leaking from his eyes, and pain raging through his body. The Kaigen flickered and died, Naruto's eyes returning to their cerulean blue, then the world went black. Kakashi opened his eyes, letting go of the root he had been holding on to. He saw that Hinata had fainted, and ordered Neji to take her home. Neji nodded and took off, unconscious Hinata in hand, leaving Kakashi at ground zero. Kakashi sighed, then turned back to the destruction. The explosion of chakra which Naruto had released had caused a 10-meter-wide crater to appear around the boy, and sent some nearby training logs through a set of boulders at the far edge of the clearing. Along with that, everything within 50 meters was coated in a fine layer of Naruto's blood. "Tsunade is going to kill me," Kakashi said. Naruto's true clone looked around at the mess that had been created by Naruto's last adventure with his bloodline. The sewer which made up most of Naruto's mind had been completely demolished. The place had sprung leaks from the overhanging pipes, and several sections of the wall had collapsed, allowing the filthy sludge to seep out into the abyss which lay beyond Naruto's thoughts. "Are you sure he can survive the Kaigen?" a voice asked from the shadows. The true clone turned. "Naruto is far more resilient than you will ever know, Kyuubi. You haven't seen his true metal yet. Naruto still holds to the mask which held him back so long ago. Once he lets go of that, the Kaigen will no longer be able to harm him, and along with that, you. This pitiful brat? He will never master the Kaigen, that is why I gave it to him. I decided that if I could not have freedom, this boy would lose his sanity. Look at him, curled up and weeping. His mind will not survive this." Naruto's true clone closed its eyes for a second, then they flashed open, the Kaigen burning within them. "Do not trifle with us, Kyuubi. The gift you have given us can destroy you just as easily as it destroyed Naruto's hands. As chilling as that sounds, must I remind you that the boy and I are now inseparably joined. If you destroyed me he would die, and you know what happens when he dies. I have no fear of the endless void, Kyuubi, and neither does Naruto fear death. If he did not have a destiny to fulfill, I would do it right now." Kyuubi's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't. At least, not without Naruto. If you tried it alone you would risk freeing me. My character is not that weak, Kyuubi. I am Naruto, without the impediment of his mask. Combined with the power of the Kaigen, I would annihilate you." The Kyuubi laughed, then retreated, leaving a few words. "Well, don't bother with me, I think you have a new resident." The true clone's eyes widened. He turned and caught sight of a slight ripple in the air. The true clone ducked behind some fallen rubble and watched as another Naruto appeared. This one had long red and blonde hair. Where Naruto's cerulean eyes would have been, sat two red-hot coals, which burned with an eerie inner light. Before the true clone could do anything, the new Naruto hurled a kunai at him. The true clone caught it in the air and stepped out from behind the rubble. "Rage, calm yourself," the true clone commanded, Kaigen flashing. The newcomer instantly relaxed, settling into an easy stance, still not entirely off his feet. "Oh boy, I can't believe this one was spawned. Naruto, why can't you have the nice ones appear first?" The true clone asked. White, sterile, bright, Naruto's eyes blinked open, taking in the hospital room around him. He felt the world pulse around him in concert with the sharp pain running through his head. "Oh Kami, my head hurts," Naruto grumbled, throwing back his blanket. He threw his legs over the side of the bed and debated whether to try standing. Every centimeter of his body was burning in pain, especially his hands. He looked down at the limbs which had been recreated, noticing that the fingers were slightly shorter and the fingernails longer and tougher, ending in a slight point. Naruto clenched his fist, and felt a burst of pain flow through his arms as the muscles protested. Naruto finally decided to go for it, and jumped out of the hospital bed. As soon as his feet touched the ground, the muscles turned to jelly. Naruto gave out a startled cry and fell to the ground, face first. Naruto heard the door open and someone hurried in. He saw a pair of feet appear next to him and a pair of hands lifted him up. A pair of green eyes framed by pink hair looked into his as he felt himself lifted up. Sakura smiled and hugged Naruto to her. Naruto smiled, feeling the warmth of Sakura's body, and hugged her back, despite the jolts then went through his arms. A few seconds later Naruto's eyes flashed open, and he struggled to get away. Sakura dropped him and he fell to the ground, trying to bring his hands up to form hand seals. Sakura's eyes quirked a little. "Naruto, what are you doing?" Naruto struggled backwards, forming a cross seal. Cage Bunshin. Several Narutos appeared, each one also on the ground, struggling to get up and apprehend Sakura. Sakura just stared at them and laughed. "Who are you? Sakura doesn't have the strength to lift me. And Sakura doesn't dress like that either," Naruto said, still trying to get away. "Naruto. You've been out for 6 months. A few things have changed." Naruto stared at her. "What? 6 months? Why didn't you wake me up?" "We tried to." Naruto blinked and looked down at his body. Now he understood why he couldn't move. 6 months of bed would have completely ruined his muscles, and any form of strength he had. Now that he examined his body more closely, he realized that his skin was noticeably paler than it usually was, and his frame was not as well muscled as it had been. He moved his fingers slowly, feeling the stiffness in the muscles and joints slowly work away. "I need to get back to training," he said resolutely, his clones bursting into smoke. Sakura watched as Naruto hauled himself to his feet and headed for the door. Just as he was about to open it, she calmly walked over, picked him up, and settled him back on the bed. He tried to struggle out of her grip, but once again, through a combination of him being weaker, and Sakura being slightly stronger than she was before, he wasn't able to break her grip. "Sakura-chan, what are you doing? I need to go train so that I can get stronger," Naruto protested. "Naruto, I may only be a medic nin in training, but I can tell that you're far too weak to be going anywhere, especially the type of training that you would subject your body to," Sakura replied, reaching for the straps on the bed. "Now, do I have to strap you down, or are you going to wait for Tsunade's approval to leave?" Naruto quickly consented to staying. After he had calmed down, and was settled in, Sakura took a seat beside him. "So, Naruto, how are you? We haven't talked since." Naruto hung his head slightly. "I'm sorry Sakura-chan. I should have been stronger, I slipped, and then it was all over. Just one slip." Sakura sighed and looked down. "Naruto, I've already forgiven you for that. The first month you were here, I visited you only once, and that was to see if I could spot what was wrong with you, not out of caring. But later, I realized that you were the only one who cared. Everyone else was sorry that Sasuke had gone, but you were the one who cared about what it made me feel like, and so, I've been here twice a week checking on you. I tried to wake you up with several techniques that Tsunade has taught me, but nothing worked. It seems like you had to wake up on your own." "Oba-chan is teaching you? Wow, that's incredible Sakura, you'll be the best medic nin ever." Sakura smiled and opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by movement at the door. She turned and got up just as Tsunade entered the room, holding clipboard and looking rather harassed. "Kami, this is the 3rd time this week that the council has tried to get me to pull the plug on Naruto." "Sakura, how's he doing?" Tsunade asked, not bothering to look up from her clipboard. "Why don't you look yourself?" Sakura asked. "I would do a full diagnostic, but I don't have the time. What are his vitals?" "Hurry up, I have things to do." Sakura shared a look with Naruto, both of them silently laughing. Naruto sat up and inhaled deeply. "Good morning Obaa-chan," he yelled. Tsunade gave a squeak and jumped into the air. Naruto let out a tremendous whoop of laughter, while Sakura giggled slightly. The Hokage glared at both of them for a moment before settling her face into a warm smile. She walked over to Naruto and hugged him, almost crushing his thin form. Naruto returned the hug, trying his best to not suffocate, or to break any bones. Of course, there was no danger in that. Tsunade knew exactly how much pressure to apply to cause the runt a little discomfort, but not seriously injure him, so she held to embrace for a few seconds until it was almost painful, then let go. "How are you feeling, Naruto?" she asked. I'm fine, Oba-chan, just a little weak. I need to get training so that I can become strong again," he declared determinedly. Tsunade smiled again and pushed him down into his bed. "You need to start slowly, Naruto. I'm going to prescribe some medicines for you, and a training schedule. Wait here for a few minutes. Sakura, keep him company while I handle this." Tsunade left the two genin alone and went off to get Naruto's things in order. Sakura filled Naruto in on the happenings of the last 6 months. Jiraiya had left after a month of waiting, saying that he was going to gather more information on the organization called Akatsuki, promising to return before the end of the year to take Naruto on a training mission. Naruto suspected that this training would also involve a closer analysis of his bloodline by the Toad Sannin, and the thought of being analyzed by Konoha's super pervert wasn't exactly an appealing idea, but the training was enough to get Naruto's mouth watering. Kakashi was currently out on a mission, and wouldn't be back for a week or so, due to the nature of said mission. Rookie 9 and Teen Guy had continued to grow during Naruto's coma. Sakura didn't have exact details, but she was fairly certain that Choji, Ino, Shino, Neji, Tenten, and Rock Lee were at or above Chunin level, and preparing for the upcoming Chunin exam. Chunin exam. Naruto yelled, "I really need to get training. How will I be able to participate if I'm too weak to move?" "That's not your main problem, Naruto. Our main problem is the fact that we don't have a third team member after," Sakura said. Naruto's face scrunched up. "Then how are we supposed to become Chunin?" "Wait, they wouldn't keep us a genin forever, would they?" Sakura sighed. "No, Naruto. Tsunade will probably assign us a team member from somewhere else, either a solo genin or a team that has 2 Chunin, but only 1 genin. Either way, we should be able to participate in a month. That means you have plenty of time, so don't worry so much." Tsunade re-entered the room carrying a large sack of bottles and a thick wad of papers. She handed Naruto 4 bottles, 2 of pills and 2 of liquid, then gave him a needle and a vial of clear liquid. She also handed him a scroll from the stack she was carrying. "Alright, you need to take the pills 3 times a day, the liquids twice, and you need to inject yourself with that directly after every training session. This scroll outlines the training schedule you should follow in order to prepare yourself for the next Chunin exams." "Any questions?" Naruto eyed the vial. "What is this?" "It's a special mixture which I developed. It will shut down your Kaigen and enhance the growth of your muscles." Sakura did not flinch at this news, so Naruto assumed that Tsunade had already told her of his new abilities. He took the proffered materials and eyed them, trying to keep them as far from him as possible while still holding them. "Does it taste bad?" he asked. Tsunade hit him on the head. "Baka, of course it does, it's medicine." Okay, just stop hitting me. Can I go now?" Tsunade sighed and nodded. Naruto formed his hands into the ram seal and focused the chakra in his body to his legs, then bounced out the window, running to the nearest training ground. Sakura and Tsunade just sighed and went back to work. Naruto was laying on his back in the middle of training ground 13, chest heaving, muscles aching, and eyes ablaze with his new power. The Kaigen was lazily swimming through a mirage of colors, passively examining the area and relaying the truth of everything he was seeing. For instance, the bird in that tree was not merely sitting and twittering, it was calling for its mate. Naruto was sure that he could get the gist of the bird song, and filed that away for further use in his studies of his new ability. The Kaigen noted this and processed the information in his brain. Naruto's true clone strolled over to him, holding up the vial and needle, carefully measuring out a dosage and kneeling next to the blonde. "You're sure about this? It means that you won't be able to summon me until the effects have worn off." "Yeah, just do it, you should know, you're me." "Not exactly. I explained that to you." "Ah yes. I think I was dozing during that session." The true clone sighed. "Look Naruto, we're here to help you, we are you. But we can't help you if you don't help yourself. Speaking of us, why didn't you tell them about our time together?" "What? Tell them that I spent the last 6 months of my life living for 2 years in my head, training with myself and my shattering personalities." "That would go over well. Those aren't your shattered personalities, they're the Kaigen's interpretation of your aspects made into sentient beings who live inside of you." Besides, there's only 3 of them right now. Yeah, rage, deception, and whatever that other guy is. That's insanity. Yes, I can see the conversation with Tsunade right now. I spent the last 6 months of my life training inside my head. With my insanity. The true clone side, remember Naruto, with the Kaigen you control that aspect of yourself. You can let it out or cage it up with a whim. Even me, your prime, can be destroyed with the power that you now hold. Although I wouldn't suggest either of those paths, locking away something of yourself lessens who you are. Remember that Naruto, especially with this drug, it might make you stronger, but it will take something more important than strength away, what makes you human. Naruto nodded in assent, then held out his arm. The true clone jabbed him and injected the fluid. Instantly, the Bunshin began to fade. See you on the other side. It called, disappearing in a haze of smoke, instead of the usual puff. Naruto felt a strange numbness steal across his mind. He couldn't feel the presence of his prime, or any of the others sitting inside his head. He also noticed that the world stopped making sense, and the birdsong reverted to just that, birdsong. Naruto sighed and took a look at himself in his forehead protector, looking once again into the cerulean depths of his birth eyes. Even as his greater perception of the world faded, he felt his normal thoughts jog back into action. When the Kaigen activated, Naruto could feel his usually hectic thoughts die down, and a sense of focus overcame his usually hyperactive personality. But now, he felt a return of the thoughts that usually existed in his mind, and yet, even these were strangely shaded, as if muted by some force. Well, this is new. Naruto said, rubbing his head, trying to clear the light fog that had fallen over his mind. As he spoke, he felt the secondary effect of the injection take effect. The tension in his muscles suddenly gave way to a wave of lethargy, stealing away the pain in them while taking all of his energy. He yawned and closed his eyes, preparing to take a short nap before going anywhere. Seconds later, he was snoring in a deep sleep. No sooner had he dropped off than a group of people marched into the clearing. Several of the newcomers wore masks, and those who didn't might as well have been, for all the emotion that they were showing towards the boy. An old man approached the boy and jabbed him with his cane. When Naruto didn't react, he nodded to one of the ninja in a bear mask. The ninja took up the blonde Jinchuriki and dashed off into the distance, followed by all but one of the unmasked ninja and the old man. Do you really think this will work, Danzo-sama? Asked the black-haired ninja. Danzo just smiled and put a hand on the boy's shoulder, looking deep into his eyes. Of course, Sai. You should really not question me so much, your training isn't complete, and nothing but complete loyalty will help you move towards the protection of the roots of this great village. Sai lowered his eyes and nodded his assent, before dashing after the retreating shinobi. Danzo turned to the memorial stone which stood nearby the boys' training area. The ground around it had been damaged severely, yet the blonde had taken careful measures to protect the stone itself. Danzo approached the stone and knelt before it. I'm sorry, Yondaime-sama, but this must be done, for the good of Konoha. If there were another way to protect our village, I would take that path, but this must be the way. He paused as if listening to someone speak. I know you won't understand. A tool will slowly lose what makes it human, but this boy will be the sacrifice that protects us all, a Jinchuriki if you will. After all, the power of human sacrifice is the greatest of all. Danzo rose and turned away from the monument, coming face to face with a fairly large dog and its master. Danzo didn't even flinch as the dog, about knee-height, gave a warning growl. The boy with the dog could not be mistaken for anyone other than Inuzuka Kiba, and the boy next to him was definitely a member of the Aburame clan, Shino by his size. Shino adjusted his sunglasses slightly, a sign which Danzo knew was an unspoken question in the Aburame body speech. The Inuzuka on the other hand was far more direct. Hey old man, what did your cronies do with Naruto? Are you a friend of that snake? Danzo laughed slightly and turned away from the Inuzuka. You should really respect your elders, dog boy, or something bad might happen to you. Kiba fell into a defensive stance as Danzo's chakra flared for a second. The old man whirled around, hands already flashing through a set of seals. Shino's bugs erupted in a cloud around him, racing at the man, while Akamaru attempted to shield Kiba from the incoming jutsu. Kaden, Gukaku no Jutsu. A massive fireball erupted from the man's mouth, burning the incoming insects out of the air while forcing the two shinobi and Akamaru to dodge. As the fireball dissipated, Shino and Kiba readied themselves for an attack that would be hidden by the momentary smoke cloud that followed any Kaiden jutsu. When no attack came, the two shinobi glanced at each other and settled slightly, still wary of any incoming attack that might appear from the smoke cloud. As the smoke cleared, no sign of the old man could be seen. Ah, he used the jutsu as a cover. Shino, how come you didn't follow him? Kiba yelled. Shino just looked at him for a second before sighing. We should go report this to Hokage-sama. If Naruto is in trouble, she'll want to know right away. Yeah, hey, what do you reckon was up with Naruto's eyes while he was training? I'm not quite sure. Kiba, Shino, and Akamaru took to the treetops as they headed towards the Hokage's tower, avoiding the paths and people that might block their way to the large structure in the middle of the village. They ran up the side of the tower, racing towards the open window that served as a view for the Hokage's office. Kiba reached the window first, and, finding it locked, instantly began hammering on the chakra-reinforced glass. Shino arrived a moment later, pushing Kiba aside and calmly sliding the window open. Kiba could almost feel the smirk that must be adorning Shino's inner self as he calmly stepped into the Hokage's office. Kiba, Shino, what are you two doing? Tsunade asked, glancing over the pile of paperwork that was sitting on her desk. Tsunade-sama, Naruto has been taken by a group of shinobi who appear to be of Konoha origins. What is the meaning of this? Shino asked calmly. Kiba butted in before Tsunade could reply, and who was the old man who used that Kaiden jutsu against us? Tsunade's eyes widened. How did he? Never mind. You two, gather up Hyuga Hinata, Neji, and Hiashi, as well as any other ninja you think will stand by Naruto in a confrontation. Move. Kiba and Shino saluted with a pair of highs and disappeared. Tsunade took out her emergency bottle of sake and took a large gulp, then hid it away again. She then withdrew a scroll from her desk and scribbled some writing on it. She called for Shizune and had the girl deliver it to the Anbu route headquarters immediately, then waited for the two genin to return. In about a half hour Shino, Kiba, Sakura, Hiashi, Hinata, Iruka, Neji and the rest of Team Guy stood before her. This is everyone? Tsunade prompted. Shino nodded. Everyone else is out on missions. Kakashi is supposed to be back in a few hours, but I didn't think you would want to wait. Tsunade nodded, feeling slightly unsettled by how few people she had with her. After all, storming the Anbu Route's HQ would be a daunting task with an army of ninja, let alone this small squad. Yet, because of the ties between the normal Anbu and the Routes, she couldn't call on help from that quarter. However, she still had one ace in the hole, and she had played that when she sent the scroll to the Routes headquarters. You see, even though the Routes was not under the direct command of the Hokage, the leader of the village could still call for up to 50 of the Routes members to be positioned at any given gate in the case of an emergency. The fact that Naruto had been kidnapped technically counted as an emergency, and she could swing it with the council later. She even felt that she might not have to reveal Naruto's bloodline if she went from the Akatsuki infiltrating Routes HQ angle. The council had begun to fear Akatsuki lately, and although many of them hated Naruto, they would rather kill themselves than allow the most powerful criminal organization to get their hands on the nine-tailed Biju. Tsunade took a look at her small army, then stood up from her seat. Having the Hokage, and one of the three legendary Sannin at that, leading them should give them some punch in getting into the Routes headquarters. Alright everyone, what we are going to be doing is intensely dangerous, not only in terms of physical danger, but also of political danger. Each of you is to wear one of these masks so that your identities cannot be discovered. If your mask becomes damaged, leave the battlefield at once. I will have Shizune standing by with a couple dozen spares, see her to get a new one. Remember, your identities must remain secret, so no signature moves. The Hyugas can use their Byakugan and Jukin, but nothing flashy like Kaiden. Kiba, leave Akamaru here and use whatever techniques you can without him. As each member of the party put on a mask, their images seemed to blur a little, and become that of a nondescript Anbu member, minus that usual sword that most Anbu carried. Everyone follow me, don't attack unless you are attacked, Tsunade ordered before turning and leaping out the window. The others followed her down the side of the Hokage tower, across the rooftops, and then up the face of the Hokage cliff. At the very top, Tsunade stopped for a second, looking over the village. She spotted a small disturbance by the west gate, nodded, and proceeded along the top of the cliff. She approached another shorter cliff face and reared her fist back and delivered a shattering blow to the wall. The cliff face shattered, or at least, what had appeared to be the cliff face. The area which Tsunade had broken was actually a cleverly disguised door, made to look like a part of the cliff wall. A surprised-looking Anbu Roots member was peppered with small bits of debris, throwing him back a few feet. "What is going on here?" yelled a voice from further down the tunnel. "Intruders!" the downed Anbu yelled. The 11 rescuers heard movement down the hallway and readied themselves for battle. Kaden, Karyu Enden, Hinata, who had been training for the last 6 months, reacted instantly. Sweden, Junsai, a small water bottle that the Hyuga had taken to carrying around with her, released a torrent of water, creating a shield over the group as the fire dragon bore down on them. An angry hissing filled the air as the jutsus battled for dominance. The Hyuga formed more hand seals, channeling her chakra through the flowing symbols. Juki Bakuha. The steam created by the two colliding techniques exploded inwards, saturating the cavern beyond the rescuers with superheated water. Several screams were heard, causing Hinata to shudder a little. Before congratulations could be given, a blast of wind blew the devastating jutsu out of the corridor. The group were scalded slightly as the cooling mist swept past them, but no serious injuries occurred. Without further delay, Tsunade charged forwards. Hinata's jutsu had left about a dozen Anbu Root members on the ground, skin red and blistering. The few who tried to put up a fight were left unconscious by a few simple taijutsu attacks from the rescuers. The source of the wind was actually a small configuration of seals, each labeled wind, carefully placed in strategic areas around the corridor to create a wind funnel, to counter any mist-based jutsu used in the area. It had worked, if only slightly, as shown by the injured members of the defenders. Tsunade studied these for a moment before carrying on down the hallway. The headquarters was mostly deserted, due to many missions which Danzo sent his group out on, and the emergency decree by Tsunade. "Shino," Tsunade commanded. Shino nodded, a group of bugs bursting from under his cloths and out into the winding corridors. A few minutes later he nodded. "I found him, Tsunade. Lead the way, we haven't got much time left." Naruto awoke once more, blinking the mucus from his eyes, trying to see where he was now. He was sure he wasn't in the forest. The ground here felt too rough, and besides, there was no sunlight. He felt sure that he had not slept for more than a few hours. Then again, the medicine might be throwing off his Kaigen's ability to read his biological clock. It was funny, ever since the Kaigen had awakened in him, he had not needed a clock to tell the time. Even better was the fact that he woke up when he wanted, not in the face of a blaring alarm. Naruto assumed the Kaigen had the ability to tell time. What he didn't know was that the Kaigen actually had the ability to measure his heartbeat, breathes, and cellular division on such a scale that it could keep time just by examining those factors. Naruto sat up, looking around himself. He was in a holding cell somewhere. The dank cold of the area seeped into his body, creating a sort of lassitude in his muscles. He stood up on his aching legs and paced the cell. It was rather small, and he didn't think he would be able to pick the lock, considering the fact that he could feel the hum of chakra flowing through the bars. This, however, didn't stop him from trying. After all, he was Uzumaki Naruto, the most hyperactive ninja in Konoha. Heck, nothing had stopped him from doing anything else before. Why now? When you're caged, the only way to go is out. Naruto's hand darted for the gap between the bars, and was instantly reflected by a shock from the chakra flowing through the bars. Naruto yelped and pulled back. His fingertips were slightly blackened from the electricity that had jumped from the bars to his hand. Gah, what kind of freak electrocutes bars? It's like they're keeping someone inside. He yelled, shaking his hand in an attempt to rid himself of the pain flowing through it. Naruto heard a small chuckle from outside. He immediately became quiet, focusing his senses on the world beyond the bars. He spotted an old man sitting in a chair, cloaked by the shadows of the far side of the room. He snarled at the man. "Let me out, you bastard. Why am I in here?" Naruto yelled across the room. "Ah, the language of youth. I think I won't." Naruto, after all, once out here, you would have little reason to listen to my offer. Naruto gave him a suspicious glance. "What offer? It seems to me like you're the one with the upper hand here. What could you want from me?" "That is the most interesting thing, young Uzumaki. What I want from you I cannot take, nor could you give it if you did not truly want to." Danzo paused. What I want, Naruto, is your loyalty. Naruto barked with laughter. You lock me up inside a cage and expect loyalty because of it. What kind of idiot do you think I am? One who possesses a most remarkable ability. If you would activate your Kaigen, I would like to tell you something. Naruto glared at him suspiciously, but felt there was no reason to not activate his Kaigen. His Kaigen had already expelled the last of the drug from his body, and he could feel the calming presence of his prime in the back of his mind once more. Naruto closed his eyes for a second, focusing his chakra into his head. He felt the power of the Kaigen unlock as the chakra infused his brain, starting the chain reaction that filled him with the power to see truth. His eyes flashed open and he glared at the man. Looking deep into the man's eyes, Naruto caught an inkling of who Danzo really was: ruthless, deadly, cruel. Yet, above all that, Naruto felt something, an instinct which held all these other impulses in check. Naruto recognized it. It was loyalty, not to any one person, but to an idea, to a village which this man had sworn to protect. Danzo smiled as a confused expression came over Naruto's face. Now that you know why I am doing what I do, perhaps you would like to hear what I have to say? Danzo asked. I'll listen, Naruto replied. Excellent. Naruto, I am the leader of an organization known as the Roots Anbu. We are the sworn protectors of Konoha and all of its laws and foundations. We are the enforcers of an ancient order, formed by the first Hokage himself. We exist outside the laws of this village, and as such, we can protect them with no hindrance whatsoever. Some have called us killers, others, traitors. But in truth, we are nothing more than protectors, much like yourself. You, a boy who was forced to take on the burden of the Kyuubi at such a young age, has protected Konoha his whole life, much like most of the members of this organization. I want you to join us, Naruto. Come, help us protect this great village from destruction. Be the greatest of all guardians, Naruto. Guard this village from everything that threatens to weaken from inside and out. Naruto stared at the man. The Kaigen continued to flow lazily through a different set of colors, and Naruto could tell that the man was not lying. He was a protector. Why should I join you, Danzo? You have imprisoned me, and will only talk to me through bars. How am I supposed to follow someone who is a coward? Danzo winced slightly, then snapped his fingers. The cell door flew open, leaving the ground between Danzo and Naruto open. There, a show of good faith. You are free to choose now, Uzumaki. Think of all the good you could do here. A warrior who can see through the deception of those who would bring us down, a hero who would defend Konoha to his last breath. Danzo's voice had taken on a note of passion. Naruto was finding it hard to find a reason not to join. Everything the man said was true, and that was a hard thing to turn away from. Tsunade sent another ninja flying with a roundhouse kick, embedding him in the rock wall. They had been fighting their way down a hallway that Shino claimed was the last obstacle to getting to Naruto. Shino himself was busy with another ninja, who, although he didn't know it, was being drained by a few choice Kikai. Shino sent a powerful punch into the mont's abdomen, and received a kneel to the chin in return. His head flew back, revealing his mouth for a second, then he slammed his forehead into the kneecap of the ninja, shattering the patella and causing the man to scream and collapse in pain. Neji was standing over 3 disabled Anbu members, having slashed through several vital muscles, including the hamstrings and biceps of his opponents, receiving a few minor cuts in the process. Rock Lee and Tenten were nearby, Tenten using a staff to knock out her opponents, while Rock Lee fought with his bare fists. Hinata and Hiyashi stood side by side, each unleashing a storm of water jutsu on any opponent that came near enough to be a threat to the rear end of the column. Kiba was leading the charge next to Tsunade, utilizing his enhanced animal reflexes and strength to push through any ninja that got in his way, or distract them enough for Tsunade to beat them down. As Tsunade finished the last ninja ahead, they came to a reinforced metal doorway. Barely pausing to think, Tsunade unleashed a terrific punch upon the doorway. It flew inwards, knocking over half of the 6 Anbu waiting for them. The other 3 had little chance as the rest of the group piled in on them, taking them to the ground in a matter of seconds. Tsunade replaced the door as soon as they were through and sealed in place with another powerful blow which bent the metal inwards. Sakura sighed and collapsed, completely drained from having to heal her friends and the enemies who were seriously injured. She was sure that almost all her chakra was gone, and the pain that flared through her body every few seconds reinforced that thought. Chakra exhaustion is not like muscle exhaustion, where some of your body hurts. No, chakra exhaustion is a lack of chakra in the body, and thus, a lack of life in the body. Sakura gulped down a soldier pill and was instantly restored, but more cautious now, seeing as how taking more than one soldier pill in a space of 3 hours could prove fatal. Tsunade glanced to the other side of the room, noting once again, that there was a door. This one was of solid oak, less sturdy than the previous, but more dungeony and evil-looking. She tried the handle, it was open. As the door swung open, they were greeted with the sight of a smiling Danzo, and a caged Naruto. "Good evening Hokage-sama, how can I help you?" Danzo asked accommodatingly. "First off, you can let the Gaki go." Tsunade replied evenly. "Of course, seeing as how he has no further wish to be here, I see no reason to hold him." "Naruto? Ready to leave?" Naruto nodded eagerly. Danzo snapped his fingers and the cage opened. Naruto leapt out and jumped onto Tsunade, eyes flashing. "Oba-chan, you saved me. Quick, let's go get some ramen to celebrate." Tsunade hit him over the head. "Baka. We're saving you, we need to get out now." "On the contrary Hokage-sama, I have ordered my men to step down." "Did you think of knocking when you came in? Or perhaps sending me a message that didn't involve Konoha's immediate destruction?" Danzo asked wryly. "Oh well, I can only expect so much from you Tsunade. Please, take Naruto, we were just having a talk, I have no further need for him." Tsunade was stunned by this, but her eyes narrowed. "What did you do to him?" "Nothing, I merely told him the truth." "Goodbye Tsunade, you will be escorted out, along with the boy." At least 4 dozen Anbu Roots members appeared behind Danzo and took the rescuers and the rescuee to the front door and led them out. On their way out, Tsunade got close enough to Hiyashi to have a quiet word with him. "Hiyashi, what do you think?" "Well, considering that Naruto is fine, and we were met with little to no force, and certainly no lethal force, and the fact that these ninja were in reserve, I believe we were merely being delayed." "But delayed for what?" Tsunade asked him. "That I do not know." 482, 483, 484. 485. Naruto counted viciously in his head. Said teen was in the middle of a small clearing, serenaded by the gurgling of a nearby stream. The day had just begun to dawn, and a golden glow flowed over the orange jumpsuit and blonde hair, granting him a halo of ethereal light. His eyes flowed through a myriad of colors, swimming and flowing like a vision in a dream. The grass around him was filled with the tang of life, awakening to the new day, and he could feel every one of them rejoicing in the light of the new dawn. A chorus of birds joined in with the silent contentment of the mighty barked giants that surrounded Naruto, a symphony of life beginning in the presence of daily rebirth, and hope that could never be extinguished by the darkest night. 500. Naruto half shouted, half thought, collapsing on his stomach. Pain flowed through his tortured muscles, complaining against the great weight on his legs, arms and torso. He ignored these protests in favor of lying on his face, sucking in life-giving breath like a sun-crazed man drinks water. Naruto's morning workout had ended a few seconds ago. 500 pull-ups and push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups and crunches, extensive water walking, and of course, running numerous laps around the large village which lay within a stone's cast of him. Of course for a ninja, a stone's cast could be anywhere from 50 feet to 5,000 yards, depending on the size of the stone. Naruto groaned and managed to get himself into a sitting position. He removed the 50-pound weights on his arms and legs, along with the 100-pound weight around his torso, dropping them to the ground. He could never quite understand how Lee was able to keep them on all the time. Such a feat was clearly a true mastery of pain control and endurance that even Naruto could equal. Of course, as soon as Naruto thought this, his Kaigen began working on an answer, but could not find one with what little he knew of Rock Lee. Not that this bothered him, he expected this was something that Lee either didn't know, or didn't have any reason to tell anyone, and his Kaigen had told him long ago that Lee was a person whose hands he could lay his life in and not be afraid. These truth visions had been popping up everywhere, and were revealing startling, confusing, and even dreadful things to him. For instance, there was one time when he saw Anko. Flashback. Naruto was in an interrogation room with Ibiki following his capture by the Roots Anbu. Tsunade had permitted Ibiki to examine him in case he wasn't the real Naruto, or they had placed some sort of brainwashing technique on him. So far Ibiki had managed to dredge up nothing, and Naruto wasn't about to give him a reason to believe he was a tool of the roots now, so he sat silently, awaiting the questioner's words, not aware that the questioner was also waiting for him to cave and tell him something. After several more minutes of staring, Naruto finally became tired of the game. He stood up, turned and headed for the door. "This is too boring, Ibiki, why don't you just let me go? Your scariness wore off a while ago, and I know the Hokage won't let you do anything. Unsavory to me, so why don't we just leave and call it a night?" Naruto asked sensibly. "Because brat, I haven't found what I'm looking for," Ibiki snarled, forcing the blonde back into his chair. In truth, Ibiki hoped with all his heart that this was the real, undamaged Naruto. His actions during the Chunin exam had earned Naruto the respect of the scarred examiner, a respect that had only increased when Naruto had risked his life to protect his comrades by taking on the Sand Jinchuriki, and his actions during the aborted attempt to bring Uchiha Sasuke back. "That's because there's nothing to find," Naruto yelled in frustration. "Prove it to me then," yelled back, slamming his fist into the table. Naruto growled and his Kaigen flared to life. Ibiki startled at the change in Naruto's eyes, and reached for a weapon, suspecting an attack from the Naruto look-alike. He knew that there was no bloodline like that in Konoha, so he simply assumed that this was not in fact Naruto, but some ninja pretending to be him. Pretending to be him very well. However, before he could do anything else, Naruto looked into his eyes and muttered under his breath. "Hawatoku." Ibiki suddenly felt the world around him sharpen in focus, and he realized that this was Naruto. He didn't know how, but he somehow knew, simple as that. All the doubts that had plagued him were gone, and he immediately headed to the door, ready to let Naruto out. However, the pessimist in Ibiki lashed out, forcing him to re-examine the situation. This boy, whoever he was, had just used a jutsu on him, and he felt like he knew the boy instantly. This was not natural, and, instead of opening the door, he called out. "Anko, come in here, the prisoner is incooperative." Naruto stared at him open-mouthed, before regaining his composure. "I just showed you the truth. What the heck is wrong with you, Ibiki?" Ibiki snorted. "What you did could have been anything. Now that you've used a just sue on me, I'm forced to call in aid." A moment later, the second Chunin examiner walked in. Naruto shuddered at her face, before he realized that something far more horrible was wrong with her. A creeping black blight seemed to be creeping along her skin, and a disturbingly large, if insubstantial snake wound its way around her, attempting to crush her. She seemed not to notice either of these things, neither did Ibiki. Yet, of all the things, this was not the most disturbing. The worst was the two pale yellow eyes that were silhouetted against the dark doorway, looking over her shoulders. Naruto cried out and fell back. Both Anko and Ibiki looked on in surprise and watched as Naruto pressed himself against the wall, struggling to remove the shackles that held him bound. Anko attempted to approach him, but he let loose a canine growl and hunched over, his eyes flashing to a dangerous red. "Shinko Bunshin, Duru Akari." The red in Naruto's eyes vanished, and a puff of smoke revealed a blonde and red-haired Naruto, his eyes glowing like angry red coals. This Naruto wore a coat similar to Ibiki's, lined with blood-red fabric. What little of the clothing that could be seen underneath was what appeared to be a tattered version of Naruto's jumpsuit. One hand came up, and the torches in the room flared to life, drowning out the luminescence of the interrogation light. "Kaiten, Shin, Inahonu." The fire lashed out at the two interrogators. They both leapt aside, and stared in horror as the two flame whips snatched up the desk and chair, burning them to ash in seconds. They ran out of time for staring when the new Naruto appeared in front of Ibiki, unleashing a fierce kick into the man's shins. Ibiki, who had been slightly distracted, cried out and fell to one knee, where the Naruto lashed out with his knee, throwing Ibiki's head back in a fountain of crimson. Before he could go any further, Anko arrived and dispatched the clone with a spin kick. It fell back, roaring in anger, before erupting in flames and fading. "Wow," Anko said, examining Ibiki's wounds. "Well, be glad that your nose wasn't straight to begin with." Ibiki grunted and stood, turning to look at Naruto, his eyes narrowed, and what the H and was that? Naruto snarled at him, then turned to Anko. "You walk in the shadow of the Orochi, seek freedom now, or be forfeit." "What are you talking about?" she yelled back, unwilling to reveal her association with Orochimaru to this freak. Naruto stood and held out his shackled hands. Mitarashi Anko, you have been marked by the snake Sanin. If you take my hand now, I can do something for you, but only if you let me. Anko stared at him for a second, then slowly held out her hand. Something in his voice had compelled her to obey, and she was sure it had nothing to do with the fact that he had a bloodline. Ibiki stayed silent, recognizing the boy's ability to empower and control others with his words. The moment their hands touched, Naruto saw the snake come to life. It leapt at him, jaws wide and hissing. Naruto stood his ground as the jaws of the snake descended on him. He used Anko's hand to form several seals. Jinchuriki. The snake bit into Naruto, and the eyes widened in malicious pleasure, before narrowing in pain. Anko cried out in pain and grabbed the back of her neck. Naruto copied the action. Ibiki dashed forward and separated them, but it was already done. When Naruto and Anko recovered, Ibiki saw that Anko's curse seal was gone, and Naruto now had an exact replica of hers on the same location as hers had been in. There is no greater power than the power of human sacrifice, Anko. This is the gift I give to you, a second chance. I will bear this burden for you. A curse laid upon you by one who betrayed your trust and love. Anko stared at him, tears in her eyes. The whispers, the pain, everything, it was all gone. She could no longer feel the snake's eyes on her at every moment, egging her on, driving her insane. Thank you, Naruto-sama, she cried, bowing from her kneeling position. Naruto just smiled and collapsed. He was released from questioning the next day. End flashback X. That had been nearly 2 weeks ago now. Naruto absently felt the bump on the back of his neck. It burned from time to time, probably in response to whatever jutsu Orochimaru had placed on it. Ever since that day, Naruto had heard voices in his head, urging him to kill, to seek power, to disregard others, to become evil. He had spoken to his prime after the incident, who had replied by hitting him over the head and telling him he was an idiot. After Naruto agreed with him, Prime had shrugged and suggested that he simply find a way to deal with the new voice in his head. Naruto suggested that Prime was a voice in his head. Prime suggested he shut the F up. Naruto wondered about why he was so rude to himself. Prime launched into an explanation about how he was different than Naruto, which had put Naruto to sleep. Yeah, dealing with himself was a real blast. I hate myself sometimes. I can be such a jerk. Naruto said to no one in particular. I heard that. Naruto ignored Prime and got to his feet. He slung his weights over his shoulders, stumbling slightly, then headed back towards the village. The Chunin guards let him in without any need for id. After, Naruto was one of the few nin who regularly passed them, and they had gotten to know his face after the first week of his training. Naruto's muscles had regained their tone, and he was pretty sure that they would continue to grow with his new training schedule. Although it was not as intensive as Lee's ability, he was fairly sure that it was more intensive than anything other ninja his age were doing. He had come to realize that many ninja these days relied on bloodlines, borrowed power, and some just stayed weak. He was determined to become far more powerful than any of those ninja, and the only way to do that was to work harder than any of the ninja who were taking the easy route. Of course, his bloodline helped. The Kaigen had revealed yet another aspect of itself during his training. It seemed to be able to recirculate the chakra through his body, essentially doubling his endurance while he was training. He wasn't quite sure how it worked, but, as long as he didn't actually burn chakra doing techniques, he could rely on this recirculation to keep him going through the most intense training session. This endurance did nothing for the pain that accompanied his daily sessions, and he was pretty sure that it would continue to do nothing. After all, the Kaigen did develop from a combination of him and the Kyuubi, and he knew that neither of them was fearful of pain, especially pain that made one stronger. Naruto unlocked the door to his apartment, unceremoniously collapsing inside, kicking his door shut with his foot. He spent several minutes admiring the ramen stain on the carpet where his face had come to rest, before realizing that he was feeling rather hungry. He pulled himself to his feet and wobbled over to the table. He pulled an apple out of the bowl in the middle of the table and devoured it in several bites, core and all, then went for an orange. He finished that off too and started some water boiling as he climbed up on his counter and pulled out his hidden stash of cup of noodles. Ever since his bloodline came into being, Tsunade, Kakashi, and his prime had all insisted he eat well, to promote growth or something like that. He shrugged, and a few minutes later, was devouring the cup of noodles with evident enjoyment. It was the little things like this that made life worth living, he thought. He finished his noodles and headed out. Today was supposed to be his first mission, as returned to active duty as a shinobi. Tsunade had been worried for a while about what kind of mission to give Naruto on his return to active duty. On one hand, she could give him a D-rank mission, which would result in a headache, and possible waste of a valuable shinobi asset. But on the other hand, giving him a C-rank mission would have the possibility of turning into another wave country mission, and she wasn't sure that sending Naruto into a situation like that in his volatile state would be an intelligent choice. However, her curiosity at what Naruto could do with his newfound abilities had gotten the better of her. She had a C-rank mission waiting for him upon his arrival, and, according to her clock, should be any moment. Kakashi, what do you reckon we're doing today, fighting S-class criminals? Or maybe an assassination? Came Naruto's loud voice beyond the door. Ba-chan better have a good mission for us on my return to duty. The door was flung open, and the remains of Team 7 marched through. Kakashi looked suitably sheepish at Naruto's loud comments, and Tsunade fuming at the brat for calling her old. Tsunade sighed and took a deep breath, before handing Kakashi a scroll. Kakashi, you are to take your team and rock and fire country borders. We have recently lost contact with an outpost, and we need to ascertain the reason. If enemy contact is found, retreat immediately and call for backup. We don't have time for another shinobi war. Hi, Team 7 yelled. Naruto, your unique abilities will be of utter importance on this mission. Should you encounter an empty outpost, you will be the one who will be able to ascertain what has happened. We know that Iwa is aggressive towards Konoha, but it will be up to you to decide how aggressive. Understood? Naruto grinned. Hi Tsunade Obaa-chan. Tsunade put him through the wall. The team made preparations and left before the sun had reached the top of its arc in the sky, and proceeded to slog through the intense heat of the fire country summer. Naruto had peeled back his jacket, and Sakura had removed her arm warmers, while Kakashi merely shrugged and kept on going, relying on a simple wind jutsu to keep him cool. It was working tremendously better than either of his charges changes in clothing. Naruto had tried to convince Kakashi to teach him the jutsu, but Kakashi had simply smiled and told him that he didn't have the control, and would probably cut himself to ribbons attempting to do the jutsu. Sakura on the other hand needed to preserve her stamina, so no special chakra cooling jutsu for her. Naruto and Sakura secretly decided to make Kakashi pay for the sweat trickling down their faces, in blood if needs be. The heat of the day soon drifted into a cool night, where Naruto and Sakura were forced to reapply their warmer garments, lest they catch a cold from the sweat on their bodies evaporating too quickly. Kakashi noticed their discomfort and called for a break for the day. Naruto dropped lightly from the branch he had been leaping on, followed closely by Sakura. Kakashi was already on the ground, his water bottle in hand. Sakura and Naruto drank greedily from theirs and found a nearby stream to refill from. Now that they were alone, Sakura finally felt it prudent to question her blonde friend. Naruto, she began. Naruto asked, his attention riveted on a nearby cluster of frogs. Why would Tsunade say that your unique abilities would be able to tell what had happened at the outpost? Naruto lost interest in the frogs, very quickly. My impressive Hokage skills? Sakura snorted, I doubt that. What is it that happened to you, Naruto? Why did you hurt yourself in the OR, and what's up with all the secrecy between you, Kakashi, and the Hokage? Naruto rose up. Sakura. Something happened to me at the Valley of the End. I've changed, and I don't know if it's for better or for worse. What happened there, Naruto? All you tell me is that you and Sasuke fought. No one else seems to know anything. What are you hiding from me? She asked, tears forming in her eyes. Naruto's heart lurched. Although he no longer had a crush on Sakura, he still cared for her deeply, and seeing her in pain was a punishment worse than anyone could deal out. Sakura. There are some things about Sasuke that you won't want to accept. If I told you what happened there, your image of him, no, your idolization of him would collapse. He did some things that will change the way that he and anyone else he comes to care about will interact. Then tell me, you want me to spend years looking for him, and trying to bring him back, without telling me why he went away? Sasuke went away for power, that's the simple truth, but what he was willing to do for power. Naruto shuddered, then shook his head, his resolve hardening, "but I'll never give up on him, and neither should you, so please, don't ask me." Sakura snarled and hit him. Naruto was surprised by the strength behind the blow and flew into a nearby tree. Before he could react, Sakura appeared next to him, preparing another punch. Before Naruto could do anything, he felt her fist connect with his jaw, sending him into the air, where he hung suspended for a while, then began to fall back to the ground. "Release me. Let me feel her blood, let me touch it. I want to feel alive. I want to taste her fear." Naruto's eyes widened as another punch pummeled him into the ground. He felt his curse seal burning. He knew he had only seconds before the seal spread, and the murderous intent took control of his body. "Sakura, run!" he yelled. Sakura paused for a second, then gasped in shock. She saw a familiar flame-shaped tattoo spread across Naruto's body. No, he wouldn't have. She screamed. Naruto felt the bloodlust take control of him, and his own inhibitions took the backseat. The curse seal was in control now, and it wanted blood. "Sasuke can't even give the curse seal. How did this happen?" she yelled, descending on Naruto. Naruto's hand shot up, connecting with the kunoichi's stomach. Her eyes widened and the air whooshed out of her lungs. She fell to the ground, gasping for breath, while the cursed Naruto stood up. Purple chakra flowed around his body as he picked Sakura up by the neck, grinning at her pain as she struggled vainly against the superpowered teen. Naruto began to tighten his grip, and Sakura flailed violently, attempting to throw him off with her improved strength. But her efforts were to no avail, as Naruto simply laughed at her feeble abilities and continued to strangle her. "Naruto." Naruto's eyes shifted slightly, then widened as the blur of Kakashi hurled him to the side. Kakashi caught Sakura before she could fall to the ground, then gently placed her on the ground. This proved to be a serious mistake, as a purple blur shot out of the darkness and began delivering blow after blow into the copy nin's body. Kakashi's eye widened in response before he disappeared in a splash of water. Naruto snarled and turned, trying to locate his new adversary. Kakashi wisely kept himself hidden, looking for an opening in the boy's defenses he could exploit without killing him. 100 ways to kill, but not a single disable. What the heck were the inventors of the shinobi art thinking? He whispered viciously to himself. Naruto appeared behind him. "They were thinking like me." Kakashi stuck out his hand and caught Naruto's fist, hurling him forward before delivering a solid kick to the boy's ribs. Naruto sailed through the air before coming to a crashing halt on the riverbank. He lurched to his feet an instant later, launching himself skyward in an attempt to get to the copy nin before he could formulate a plan. But of course, Kakashi wasn't called a genius for nothing, and he proved his title justly. The launched Naruto slammed into Kakashi, who had raised his forehead protector in preparation. As the two fell to the ground, they locked eyes. Kakashi forced all of his willpower into a single hypnotic suggestion. "If you activate the Kaigen, you can defeat me." Naruto's eyes flashed as the Kaigen flared to life, then the world froze. The curse seal turned to a molten red, battling against the Kaigen. However, millennia of Kitsune instinct, and the pure willpower of a teenage boy, forced it back into its normal shape. Naruto's eyes flashed brilliantly, and the Kaigen reordered the chakra pathways around his shoulder to emulate the 8-point seal, creating a block to the curse seal's power. Then they landed. Kakashi let out an UFH as Naruto landed on top of him, and they both lay there for a few seconds before. Naruto. Could you get off of me, this kinda hurts." "What the heck is your body made of?" Kakashi said through the pain in his back. Naruto smiled sheepishly and rolled off of his mentor, who began to breathe easier instantly. They both lay there for a second before a pink-haired kunoichi wandered into the clearing, her eyes glaze over. He wouldn't have. Why would he put the curse seal on Naruto? Doesn't he know that it could be fatal, that it could make Naruto evil? She asked no one in particular. "Sakura, Sasuke didn't do this to me," Naruto said calmly, trying to soothe her. Hope flared in her eyes, but they darkened instantly. "Don't lie to me, Naruto. I knew he did something horrible to you, and now I know exactly what it was." "That Teme." Naruto stared at her hopelessly, before making a decision. "Sakura, I'm not lying, he didn't do this to me." "I did." Sakura's eyes flashed. "No you didn't, I know you. You would never take that path to power. Not like Sasuke did." Naruto scowled. Of course I wouldn't, but for someone else I would. You did this to bring Sasuke back? She yelled. Why would you sink to that level, Naruto? No, it wasn't for Sasuke. It was for that creepy examiner lady. What? Orochimaru. He put this thing on her when she was a kid. I was able to remove it, but I had to become the host in order for it to leave her. Evil like that can't be destroyed. It has to be taken up like a burden. Sakura stared at him. This was the Naruto she knew. Willing to give up anything for other people. He had never hesitated in trying to cheer her and many of the rookie 9-up. Why shouldn't he try to extend that kindness to others? Every day Naruto surprised her by his selflessness, unlike Sasuke, who spent most of his time brooding over the ways in which he could kill his brother for his revenge. Not for the sake of another, not out of a sense of justice, just a burning hate that consumed everything around him, including the people that loved him. But then, what did he do to you that was so horrible? Sakura asked, bracing herself in the tower of her collapsing Sasuke shrine. Naruto looked at Kakashi, who nodded. She deserves to know, being your last teammate. Naruto sighed and pulled off his jacket and shirt. His toned muscles would have been a distraction, were it not for the spider webbing scar that was settled just over his heart. It looked as though Naruto's body were made of safety glass, and somebody had thrown a rock at it and hit him just above his heart. My Kami, is that a? Sakura began. Naruto nodded. Sasuke used the Chidori on me at the Valley of the End. Sakura blinked, tears flowing from her eyes, then she collapsed. Naruto quickly moved to comfort her, and she clung to him. They stayed there for a while, and Kakashi left to prepare camp. When they finally separated, Sakura had gotten a hold of herself enough to stand on her own, and think without crying. As she moved to camp, she noticed that Naruto's stomach looked different. Naruto, what happened to your stomach, did he? Naruto looked down at the skin that, when he channeled Chakra, revealed the 8-point seal of the Yondaime, No, that was me. When Sasuke put his hand through me I hit myself with my Rasengan. Sakura stared at him. You used the Rasengan? She whispered. Naruto sensed another outburst and quickly headed it off. I noticed him beginning a Chidori, and I knew the only defense would be the Rasengan. I swear to you that it was only a shield for me. If I had broken through his defenses I would have held it back and knocked him out with my other hand. Sakura seemed to deflate, dropping her head and arms. Naruto hugged her and she hugged him back, then they moved back to the camp. When they reached the camp Kakashi gave Naruto a cut sign and pointed at his eyes. Remembering that his eyes were still an S-class secret, Naruto began to deactivate them, but not before Sakura noticed Kakashi's movement and whipped her head around to look at him. Naruto, what is that? She asked, making eye contact with him for the first time since he had activated his bloodline. Naruto would have replied if he could have. However, his Kaigen flashed brilliantly and rendered him unconscious. Sakura stared at him for a moment before sitting down by the fire. You have some explaining to do, Kakashi-sensei, she said, cracking her knuckles dangerously. Oh yeah, he said, leaning back, where should I begin? The following day found Team 7 sprinting through the trees to their position. The outpost they had been assigned to check out was only a few miles away, and Sakura had been pestering Naruto about his new abilities. Naruto had tried his best to explain the situation with his bloodline, but he himself knew only what his prime had been able to discover about his abilities. Sakura had been quite put out by this, and had almost hit him. Luckily, Kakashi intervened just in time to prevent said punching. Sakura, we have a mission to do. Beating up Naruto won't do you any good, he already got enough of that last night. He reasoned. Sakura gave him and Naruto a glare, then focused on the branchway they were traveling on. The outpost was only another few hours travel away, and talking would just hinder their progress. This however did not stop her from falling deep into thought while navigating the forest canopy. Now that she thought about it, Naruto had begun to change ever since his encounter with Sasuke, and their battle at the Valley of the End. She had just assumed that the subtle changes occurring in him ever since that day had been due to the fact that he was determined as ever to protect his friends, even if it meant protecting them from themselves. Naruto had grown distant, he no longer used the word datbeo, and his jokes were becoming farther and farther between. She glanced over at his face and found a much more mature, and far more serious person than she had known. She wasn't sure that she liked it. Naruto had always been a constant in Sakura's life, a person who never changed no matter what. He would always have a kind word or funny joke to tell someone when they were feeling down, even if that person didn't necessarily like him in return. He also kept up his smile no matter what. She remembered beating him up so many times, and was unable to think of a time he had either resisted, or gotten serious with her about not touching him. She felt slightly ashamed at her previous behavior towards him, but in turn, she was becoming even more worried about what he was becoming. This bloodline limit. The Kaigen, it seemed to be able to affect Naruto's personality, and she wasn't sure she liked what it was making him into. Before she could brood further on this subject, they reached the clearing which held Konoha's outpost. The outpost in question looked disturbingly unmanned, considering that there were no shinobi in the lookout tower, nor any at the front gate to greet them. Of course, if there had been any at the gate, they would have been hard-pressed to explain why the gate had been smashed to pieces. Naruto, Sakura, keep your eyes open. Whoever did this was able to overpower 4 Anbu-class ninja. If they're still here, we're going to need to make a quick exit. Kakashi cautioned his 2 genin. They both nodded and all 3 drew kunai from their holsters. Kakashi jumped over the ruins of the gate, landing in the middle of the courtyard, crouched and scanning the area. He gave his genin a hand signal and they followed, also checking for anything that he might have missed. A red smear underneath confirmed the presence, if the unliving presence, of one of the 4 Anbu stationed at the outpost. Sakura? Kakashi asked. Sakura didn't even bother checking his pulse. What? You want me to ladle him together? Despite her jibe, Kakashi could see her going slightly green at the sight of the corpse. Surprisingly enough, Naruto didn't even flinch. This disturbed Kakashi more than the fact that a budding medic nin should be sickened by the sight of blood and death. He was drawn out of his reverie as Naruto took point, creating a pair of clones to lead the way into the eerily quiet building. The clones signaled a halt at a fork in the passageways. The single flaring torch that lit the hallway cast dancing shadows along either path, and even though the structure was made of wood, it seemed to be as cold as stone to the eye. Yet, most unnerving of all was the man crucified on the wall, one hand pointing down, and the other pointing to the left. His eyes were wide open, and they could feel more than hear the rasping sound of his breath, as if transmitted through his eyes. 4 kunai pinned him by his hands and feet to the structure, and long-dried blood coated the outer edges of the weapons that held him in place. Kakashi and Naruto merely stared, while Sakura edged forward slightly, channeling healing chakra into her hands. Naruto looked deep into the man's eyes, willing his bloodline to activate. His eyes flashed and the Kaigen flared to life, staring deep into the man's soul. Confusion, fear and pain marked the man's mind, and Naruto tightened his focus, willing the Kaigen to search deeper. He hit a block in the man's mind, a self-wrought shield which held out all other sources of stimuli, protecting the more sensitive parts of the brain from harm. Naruto pushed slightly, feeling the wall harden under his touch, then shrugged. A wave of unfocused mind energy sledgehammered into Naruto's skull, transmitted by the man into his own mind. Naruto reeled back and quickly deactivated his Kaigen. Kakashi looked questioningly at Naruto. What is it? Naruto rubbed his temples and explained, reflex. He's lashing out at anything that comes near his mind. He was definitely hit by a very powerful genjutsu, and his natural defenses have clammed up. Sakura continued towards the man, holding out her green-clad hands towards him, as if in supplication to an image of the gods. She went for the arms first, gesturing for her teammates to help her. She first removed 1 kunai, holding one hand over the wound as he used the other to remove the weapon. Kakashi held the man up while Sakura disposed of the remaining 3 kunai, healing the wounds where each one had been in the process. Kakashi set him on the ground gently, and the man's breathing began to regulate into long deep breaths, instead of the rattling inhalations of before. The 2 eyes closed and he drifted away from the world. Kakashi scanned the area once more before getting up and dusting his hands off. You 2, stay here and watch him. I'm going ahead to see if there's any more. He ordered. Hi, the 2 teens replied. Kakashi took the right path, leaving the 2 genin to watch the rear and left paths. Sakura continued to heal the man's wounds, and Naruto set his clones at one entrance while guarding the other. He didn't bother talking to Sakura. He didn't want to distract her from the work at hand. Her skillful hands flowed across the Anbu's body, reducing bruises to mere lumps, and fading bright red cuts into tough scar tissue. Sakura probably would have left him alone if she hadn't already had to exert a great amount of healing chakra on his body during the removal process. As wonderful as healing chakra is, it comes with a heavy price. Any person who undergoes any serious amount of healing begins to suffer from accelerated aging as the cells in their body undergo forced cell division. Then again, aging was better than dying, at least to most ninja. Sakura let out a sigh as she finished, her chakra reserves almost completely used up. Even though she had been training with Tsunade for more than half a year, she hadn't yet been able to gain a large enough chakra reserve to continually heal as most medic nins did. She downed a soldier pill and sat while the energy rushed back into her system, then almost screamed as someone's hand clamped over her mouth. "Sakura, it's me, be quiet." Naruto hissed, sniffing the air, "There's someone near, and it's not Kakashi-sensei." Naruto pointed at his two clones, "You two, go find out who it is, let them off if you can." The two clones nodded and dashed down the left path, fading from sight in a few moments. Naruto released Sakura and motioned for her to grab the anbu. "We have to get out of here, the casualty is our first priority. I don't want to risk him with a bunshin, so you'll have to carry him. Don't put him down no matter what, he's our only key to what happened here." Sakura nodded and gave no argument. Naruto was definitely the better fighter, and the soldier pill chakra was never quite as effective as chakra gained from resting and real food. Naruto summoned another pair of clones and led them back the way they had come, sending his two copies to check the corners before they got to each one. No enemies showed themselves, but Naruto stayed vigilant all the same, until they stepped out into the piercing rays of the noon sun. That was his mistake. Naruto closed his eyes for a second, taking in the cool breeze and the warm rays of sunlight that fell upon his face. When he opened them, all hell broke loose. Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu. Naruto dove back into the building, knocking Sakura and her Bruden back inside with himself. He slammed the metal door as he passed it and ordered his two clones to brace it. Within seconds the two clones burst into smoke as the door shimmered white-hot and began to melt. Naruto took the initiative and jumped to his feet, forming a Rasengan in his right hand as he moved. Rasengan. The Rasengan in his hand slammed into the door, hurling the superheated metal outwards into the path of anyone who would have been preparing for a follow-up attack. The door fragmented as the heat and air pressure tore it apart, sending burning metal shards into the courtyard. A figure in a red clouded cloak smashed the ground with a large sword, causing a gout of water to erupt from the ground, effectively blocking the metal shards in their path, or slowing them enough for him to dodge. "Naruto, get out of here," a voice yelled beyond the wall of water. Naruto recognized Kakashi's voice and looked closer at the wall of water which was starting to recede. Kakashi was holding back another man with a red clouded cloak with a kunai, while the man attacked with a wakizashi, striking so swiftly that he appeared to be holding nothing but a flashing crescent of light. The other man with a larger sword had turned his focus to Naruto, completely ignoring Sakura. "Kisame, Itachi," Naruto whispered, then to Sakura, "Sakura, put him down, he won't be in any danger, we're going to need all the firepower we can get if we want to leave here alive." Sakura nodded and set the man down in the doorway. She pulled on a pair of gloves to protect her hands and took a stance by Naruto. Naruto drew a kunai from his holster and fell in beside her. Kisame grinned and released the wall of water. It fell in a giant waterfall at his feet, and he rode it towards the two young ninjas. "Let's go," Naruto yelled, taking off in a blur. Sakura smashed the ground, sending small cracks all the way through it, siphoning the water and slowing the speed of the waterfall that was racing towards them. Kisame was caught slightly off from the change in water speed, giving Naruto the chance to burst from the water under him, propelled by a Rasengan in his left hand. Naruto brought his kunai up, aiming for Kisame's head. Kisame grinned even wider and jerked his head aside, releasing one hand from his sword and catching the kunai hand as it swept past. Naruto brought his Rasengan-laden hand to bear, forcing Kisame to block with Samahata. The chakra-consuming sword made short work of the spiraling sphere and left Kisame open for Naruto's last attack. Naruto forced a burst of chakra through his feet, and a kunai which he had embedded into his boot shot out, homing in on the Nukanen's arm. Kisame's eyes widened an instant before the kunai connected with his right arm, sending a spray of blood into the air as the blade cut through his triceps. Samahata took a nosedive and Kisame released Naruto in order to catch it, bringing the massive sword around into a swing that would have cut Naruto to ribbons if he had still been there. As it was, the log which had appeared in his place took quite a beating. Kisame growled and kicked the log away, and, taking a firm grip with his left hand on his beloved sword, blurred out of existence. Oh shish. Naruto had time to think. A flurry of blows rained down on the orange-clad nin, and he desperately dodged away, deflecting a few hits with a pair of kunai and taking even more. Before long, streams of blood flowed down his body, and his jumpsuit was completely soaked in blood. Kisame wasn't giving him any room to perform jutsu, or even think about striking back with his two now pitiful-looking kunai. Naruto's first attack had succeeded because of arrogance, he couldn't count on that happening again. Fortunately for him, he could count on another factor which was about to impact in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bam! Sakura's fist slammed into a concrete section of the wall, sending a boulder flying at Kisame. Kisame snarled and batted it aside with his injured arm, but the attack had served its purpose. Naruto crossed his hands in a familiar symbol and called out his next attack. Shinko Bunshin. Naruto's true clone appeared next to him, reflecting a horizontal strike with a surprisingly accurate depiction of Momochi Zabuza's sword. Hope you don't mind, Naruto. I brought some memories along with me, and a few skills. His Prime said. Whatever works, now get to work. Naruto countered. Prime nodded and set about reflecting Kisame's strikes, keeping him off Naruto for a few more moments while he prepared another Rasengan. Kisame, who was shocked into near paralysis of mind, was recovering, and would be able to overwhelm Prime in a few moments. Rasengan. Naruto blazed past Prime, burying the Rasengan into the ground at his feet. Dust and debris flew outwards, pelting Kisame with an assortment of improvised shrapnel, and making him fall back for a second. Prime formed his own seals and called out. Daru Akari, Tanryoku, Iryoku. 3 not quite copies of Naruto appeared beside Prime in a burst of red, gold, and dark blue light. Rage appeared as he had before in the interrogation room with Ibiki and Anko, a fearsome figure with burning eyes and clawed hands. Courage was a tall, powerfully built Naruto with golden eyes that shone from within, casting a faint light around his body. Will had the same piercing blue eyes as Naruto, and was built almost the same, except for a slightly bulkier frame. Courage, you're with me, we're going head-on with this shark. Will, you hold back and hit him when you see an opening. Rage. Just attack, okay? Not any of us, though. Prime ordered, the Kaigen flashing in his eyes briefly. What in Makai is that technique? Kisame questioned, examining the 4 clones. Your death. Prime replied, lunging forward, followed closely by Courage, who had drawn a sword similar to Hayate's. The 2 fighters fought with the synchronization that only a bonded mind could form. Prime dove in for an attack, sweeping for Kisame's legs with his cleaver, while Courage went high, aiming for his midsection. Kisame reflected both attacks with his own giant sword and countered, hoping to clip one of the clones and eat its chakra away to nothing. Will foresaw this and chose that moment to burst forward, coming in low and to the right, dragging an adamantite staff along which looked vaguely like the monkey boss's transformation. The staff swept in, and would have caught Kisame in the ribs if he had not focused chakra to his feet and launched himself into the air to avoid the attack. He held Samahata between himself and the 3 clones, and had a second to realize that the 4th was missing. Rage had forsaken weapons in favor of his clawed hands, and hurled into Kisame from behind, tearing a gash down his back upon impact, and digging his teeth into the shark man's cartilage-tough collarbone. Samahata swept around and Kisame let out a cry of anger and pain, attempting to swat the nuisance off his back. Rage sent a kick into Kisame's back, propelling himself upwards while forming seals. Kaden, Habashira. A pillar of fire erupted from Rage's hands, hurtling towards Kisame at an alarming rate. Kisame moved Samahata into the path of the flames and let it feed on the chakra-based fire. He grinned victoriously as his sword sang out in the joy of the blazing fire. Sandankamai Gokusha, Maindo, Batty, Ki, Will, Prime, and Courage stood in a triangle under Kisame, linked together by bands of blue, gold, and red force. Chakra flared upwards into the sky, catching Kisame and hurling him to the ground, halting him just before impact, held between the three clones by bands of the three combined colors spiraling out from each of the users. Kisame snarled and struggled, but found that the thought of escaping seemed too hard at the moment. Besides, his limbs felt rather tired, and he didn't really think he wanted to escape. He could just sit here and wait for Itachi to do all the fighting. Yeah, that's it. Rage landed on the outside of the triangle, and hurled himself forwards, only to be caught by Prime just as he hit the edge of the geometric shape. Hold on Rage, we need to keep him like this for a while, then you can have you fight. He soothed, the Kaigen flaring once more in his eyes, but settling. Instantly as he focused on holding his edge of the circle up, you'll probably be the first to go. This one seems to have a powerful mind. I'll probably be next, that will leave you courage. You need to hold him until Naruto can help Kakashi, or at least delay him enough that Rage can hold him for that long. The two other clones nodded and redoubled their efforts, digging deep into their newly created chakra reserves, cycling all the non-major components of their cloned bodies into energy to be used in the jutsu. Naruto was nowhere in sight. He had departed to aid Kakashi as soon as he had slammed his last Rasengan into the ground. Sakura stood by, hefting a rock and preparing to hurl it at Kisame in case he got past the four Naruto clones. Kakashi parried Itachi's blade once again, falling back under the vicious onslaught that the elder Uchiha was putting on. Kakashi could feel his arms going numb from the vibrations that each attack sent through his arms, and was fairly sure that Itachi could only feel a fraction of the pain that he himself was. Not to mention the fact that Kakashi was bleeding from several mid-sized gashes, while Itachi was fairly untouched, except for a few hairs on the ends of his cloak, which Itachi was seriously considering taking off, mostly to save on dry cleaning and repair bills. Hey Itachi, it looks like your friend is having some trouble. Kakashi noted in passing as more blows rained down on him. Itachi risked a glance back and did note that Kisame was getting the snot beat out of him by a pair of teenagers and some interesting-looking clones. Itachi turned back and merely shrugged. He holds back against children, I think he may like them, or perhaps he just wants to feel the taste of dashed hopes. Well, he should get enough of that from you today. Kakashi remarked. Oh? Itachi replied, sending a kick behind himself, knocking Naruto into the air while slashing at Kakashi. Kakashi would have given up all hope that his student had become useful had he not noticed the boy wink as he flew into the air. Your genin has terrible stealth skills, a civilian in a crowded room could have detected his approach. That would be because he wanted you to hear him. Itachi's eyes widened momentarily and he sent one more slash at Kakashi before diving backwards, straight out of his sandals. The sandal he had kicked Naruto with exploded, sending small splinters everywhere. Kakashi had wisely moved away as soon as Itachi had realized the danger. Now that was clever, it's too bad I'm going to have to kill him. I would have enjoyed his antics for years to come in our encounters. Kakashi shrugged, there's no way you're going to kill Naruto, not while I'm alive. Ah, such determination, the will of fire is it? Itachi asked, let me show you how truly weak you, will of fire, is. Kakashi didn't even have a chance. The Sharingan in Itachi's eyes went Mangekyo in an instant, and Kakashi was staring right at them. Naruto's Kaigen flared to life behind Itachi and managed to catch Kakashi's Sharingan eye before Itachi muttered out his attack. Tasuki, Hawatoku, Yomi. Kakashi felt a sort of shield slide over his eyes and he gazed into the depths of Itachi's Sharingan and felt nothing. He blinked for a second, then pretended to fall unconscious. To Itachi, it had felt like he had tortured Kakashi for 3 days straight, and he had the massive chakra loss to prove it. However, Naruto's timely intervention had prevented Kakashi from falling into the nightmarish world that Itachi was able to create. Itachi turned, raising his sword, slightly tired and pained from using the ultimate Sharingan technique. He noticed Naruto seemed to be stooped over, as if he were in intense pain. Itachi wondered at this before Naruto's head flew up, Kaigen blazing away. Itachi, his Mangekyo Sharingan already activated, reacted instinctively to the danger, unleashing another burst of one of his most powerful abilities. Tsukiyomi. Kyojutsu. Itachi's world dissolved in a sheet of white light. Naruto felt like he had been punched in the gut, then stabbed in the head, then had every bone broken in his body. 20 times over, not to mention the fact that his eyes felt like they were being burned out of their sockets. maybe reflecting that Tsukiyomi wasn't such a good idea. For every reflected Tsukiyomi, Naruto had been hit with a shattering force of mental energy that was exerted in the process of executing such a technique, and even though the worst had been stopped, he still felt like he had been completely owned. Naruto exerted a force of will, lifting his head and locking gazes with Itachi. Tsukiyomi. Kyojutsu. The Kaigen flared brilliantly and Naruto was temporarily blinded by the light emanating from his own eyes. Naruto felt a slight tearing in his brain as his and Itachi's minds spiraled off into the world of Tsukiyomi, then were diverted by the power that the Kaigen held over all forms of genjutsu. Naruto hung suspended in the reality of Kyojutsu. He felt warm and safe here. All of his misconceptions, convenient truths, and false premises were true here, and it made it a whole lot more attractive than the real world. He shook his head slightly, clearing his head of such thoughts. One could literally be trapped in their own Kyojutsu if they weren't careful, and would end up a drooling vegetable in the real world while they reveled in this false reality created by the power of truth. Naruto sharpened his gaze and willed Itachi into being before him. The missing Uchiha appeared before him, suspended like Naruto in the field of white which defined Kyojutsu. Naruto willed a grassy field into being and they stood facing each other. Itachi gazed around in wonder. "What is this place?" he asked, too amazed by the technique to be suspicious for now. Of course, Naruto believed that any person who came into this world would be amazed by it, so naturally, the Kyojutsu made it so. "This is a reality of my own creation. All my lies and truths are truths here." Itachi turned his gaze to Naruto and was surprised again. "You're not that tall. I perceive myself to be equal to any man, and therefore, in this world, I am." Itachi pondered this for a moment. "And why have you brought me here, Jinchuriki?" Naruto smiled. "To kill you." Itachi reached for his sword, drawing swifter than the eye could follow, and beheading Naruto. Naruto watched calmly as the sword passed through his neck and out the other side, without a drop of blood being spilled. "Bladed weapons don't work in here, Itachi. I believe it so, and so it is. Your sword might as well be a rose for all the good it will do you." Itachi's sword metamorphosed into a rose, the thorns pricking Itachi, causing him to drop it. Itachi glared and activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto met his gaze calmly. Amaterasu. The black flames erupted around Naruto, and he stepped out, completely unshattered. "Your Mangekyo Sharingan has no effect here, and in fact, it will never work again." Naruto paused, then delivered his ultimatum, "Be it so." Itachi cried out in pain as the neural pathways in his mind seized up. Red and black bled out from Itachi's eyes until only 3 tomos and the red of the third-level Sharingan remained. Itachi fell to his knees in the pool of red and black at his feet, staring at his reflection in what used to be his Mangekyo Sharingan. He felt part of mind shriveling up and dying as Naruto's jutsu took full effect, denying him of the power he had killed his best friend for. He snarled and jumped to his feet preparing to charge at Naruto. He stopped. Something warm filled his heart. "What?" he asked. "The loss of the Mangekyo means that you never actually killed your friend. He committed suicide. The trauma of killing him no longer weighs upon your soul. The warmth in your heart is redemption, Itachi. A second chance if you will. Now, take my hand." Itachi reached forward. "Oh yes, and one more thing," Naruto said as Itachi took his hand. Itachi understood the moment he touched Naruto's hand, and the world faded into blackness. Naruto returned to the real world riding a wave of pain. The Kyojutsu's power to restrain his one physical discomfort was nullified as soon as he departed from that world, and the truth of reality crashed into him like a wave of kunai. Naruto cried out and fell to the ground, the Kaigen lurching across his eyes, every color known to man just swimming through it. Naruto felt raging pain flowing through his head. He had done some serious meddling with Kyojutsu, and the small world inside his head in which it dwelt was being assaulted by fact and history in an attempt to undo his work. Naruto growled and flared his Kaigen one last time. Colors danced brilliantly through his eyes. "This is my reality." The Kaigen sputtered and died, withdrawing the domain safely into his mind, leaving him with a headache the size of a charging rhino. Naruto's clones faded out of existence along with the Kaigen, releasing Kisame from his prison. Naruto would have paid more attention to this if he weren't busy trying to block out the intense pain flowing through his body. It felt as if every cell in his body were being torn apart on a molecular level. He felt his DNA unraveling and being replaced by more of the Kyuubi's yokai. He was helpless to stop the transformation, and just laid back and felt the violation of his body flow through him. He could also feel the curse seal yearning for release. He expended what little chakra he could to amp the containment seal and waited. Naruto felt the parting of air above him, and saw the massive shape of Samahata descending towards him. The pain and damage to his body was too severe to allow him to dodge in time, and he was pretty sure that blocking was not an option. He thought of all the people who he would be leaving behind. Iruka, Sakura, Kakashi. All of his friends, especially Sasuke. The thought of Sasuke must have served as a trigger. For in that instant, a crescent of steel slashed outwards, blocking the larger sword. "Kisame, we are not to kill the Jinchuriki," Itachi said coldly, 3 tomos, not the Mangekyo, spinning. Naruto sighed in relief. "We're taking him with us." Well crap. Naruto would have protested more if a solid hunk of concrete had not slammed into Kisame from behind, sending him flying into the side of the building. When that happened, he just cheered inside and focused on keeping the pain from blacking him out. "Looks like you guys forgot about me, Bakas," Sakura called, hurling another piece of concrete at Itachi. Itachi felt about half as bad as Naruto, and that's without taking into account Naruto's ridiculous ability to endure pain to achieve a goal. Instead of an impressive display of rock smashing, Itachi simply stepped to the side. This however was his undoing. Sakura had in fact hurled 2 rocks, one initial, larger rock to distract, and one slightly smaller one to follow in its shadow. She had remembered their fight with Zabuza and had simply applied the technique Sasuke had used on rocks instead of shuriken. Even so, it would have failed if Naruto had not just traumatized Itachi's Sharingan enough to cause its abilities to fade for this fight. Itachi had time to bring up one arm, and felt the bone collapse under the impact. He growled and skidded backwards. His left hand hanging useless at his side, but otherwise uninjured. "Whore! Prepare to die!" yelled Itachi, leaping into the air. A screeching like a flock of birds enveloped Itachi's senses and he glanced down. Kakashi was flying up towards him at an alarming rate, a Chidori clasped in his hand, preparing for a lethal strike that would surely end his life. There was no time to dodge. Itachi felt pain like no other as Kakashi's Chidori tore through his right leg and up into his abdomen. His entrails fell to the ground as the Chidori exited from his right shoulder, and the light faded from his eyes. Before Kakashi could feel a sense of gratification for defeating one of the most feared Konoha missing nins, Itachi's face changed. Kakashi did not recognize him, but the scratched Iwa forehead protector said it all. Kakashi landed in a crouched position an instant before the body hit alongside him. He didn't even bother to check, knowing that Itachi's puppet was already dead. Another Chidori chattered into his hand and he raced towards the wall Kisame had been thrown into. He was not about to let the other nin get back onto even ground now. Kisame chose that time to stick his head out of the rubble, and received a Chidori right to the face for it. Kakashi wasn't sure he would be able to identify the nin even if he wanted to. However, he still collected their identification in headbands. They could be worth something in the bingo book, and the 3 of them could split it later. "Hey Sakura, get that man and let's get out of here. I'll carry Naruto." Kakashi reached down and grabbed his student, and was surprised to find how heavy Naruto was. "Hey Naruto, you should lay off the snacks," Kakashi joked. "My body hurts sensei." "Shut up," Naruto grumbled. "Hey, who's doing the walking here?" Naruto sighed, then fell unconscious. "Yeah, that's what I thought." They departed, and didn't stop moving till they could barely see the trees they were jumping on. Naruto and Prime sat on a pair of rather plush cushions in a red carpeted room. A table with various scrolls scattered over it stood between them. Prime looked up from the scroll he was studying. "Welcome back Naruto. I'm just trying to learn some more swordmanship, might come in handy later." Naruto nodded, leaning back in the comfortable cushion. "Although I must say, your skills in weapon fighting are rather lacking. Why don't you get that lazy sensei of yours to teach you something?" He suggested. "All I've been able to get is what you've observed from Zabuza, Hayate, and the few other swordsmen you've seen in action. Although, the fight with Kisame gave me quite a bit of things to work with. I'm not interested in fighting with weapons." Naruto replied simply. "Naruto, what did I tell you when we began training? Naruto sighed, you must develop all areas of jutsu. Ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, and kenjutsu. Specialization leads to stagnation, and stagnation leads to death. Right, so, you need to take up a weapon. It doesn't even need to be as graceful as a sword. You could take some more time with your kunai. Naruto sighed again, actually, I've been thinking. Prime sat up, paying attention. Naruto continued. I need a weapon that will allow me to fight with clones, so nothing long-ranged like a chain. So, I don't really know. Prime deflated and sweat dropped. Well, you've gotta pick something. What about a spear? Spears are good things. Naruto snorted, way too slow and clumsy for my taste. It was Prime's turn to sigh. Look, I can see we're going nowhere here. Why don't you talk to that Tenten girl? She's a weapons mistress, she might have some ideas for you. Naruto rubbed his chin. Good idea. Alright, I'll do it. Prime shrugged. Okay, well, while you're deciding, you want to help me organize this? Naruto sighed, and closed his eyes. The scrolls on the table began rearranging themselves into stacks, sorted by subject and alphabetization. Prime nodded approvingly and went back to the scroll on swordsmanship. Naruto finished in a second and got up. Alright, I'm gonna go survey the damage in here, see ya. Prime nodded, not taking his eyes away from the scroll. You're not gonna like it. Kyuubi was mucking about while you were fighting. Naruto shrugged, so far it hasn't hurt me too terribly whenever he does his thing. Prime looked up. Yes, Kyuubi will help you, but remember, he has his own agenda. He's up to something with all these changes, and I don't know what. That's what scares me the most about it. Naruto nodded assent and left the refuge. The sewer of his mind was in worse shape than usual. The walls were starting to crack, causing even more dross to seep into the sewer, raising it to knee height. Naruto grimaced and waded through his damaged mindscape. Using the Kyojutsu was extremely dangerous to one's mind, and Naruto could see the results now. When he had taken Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan, it had been stored away in his mind. As soon as Itachi had left the world of Kyojutsu without it, reality had rushed in to seize it and return it to its owner. Naruto had held it back using the Kaigen, locking the Mangekyo Sharingan away in his mind. That was his destination. Naruto crossed paths with Insanity on the way, who was babbling something about insects crawling under his skin. Naruto shuddered and sent him back to his quarters. Insanity obeyed until he was out of sight. What he did then, Naruto did not know, nor care. The other aspects were probably resting. Existing in the real world was taxing on Naruto's aspects, and they had to rest immediately when they returned. Except for Rage, who seemed to not be affecting by anything at all. Naruto finally came to a door that had the kanji for Kyojutsu engraved on it. It was across from the Kyuubi's holding room. The irony of this did not escape Naruto, and he was fairly certain that the Kyuubi had given a lot of effort into making sure that the world of Kyojutsu was near him. Naruto paused at the door, not sure if he should open it, lest reality take the chance to sweep in and take back what he had robbed. Naruto shrugged, then flared the Kaigen to life. He formed barriers along the hallways and the entrance to Kyuubi's lair with his mind and opened the door. Reality did not swoop in to take back what belonged to it. Naruto stepped in and closed the door, then let the Kaigen fade. The white room contained two objects. 1, a red rose, and 2, a small puddle of red and black. Naruto formed a small black chest and approached the puddle. It weaved slightly as he approached. Naruto opened the chest and willed the puddle into it. Instead of obeying, the puddle climbed into the air, forming a red and black stain on the world of Kyojutsu, then it began to fade. Naruto flared the Kaigen to life, forcing Kyojutsu to reject the Mangekyo. Kyojutsu did not respond, and the Mangekyo continued to fade, then a color grew where it had faded. Naruto heard voices, then saw Kisame on the wall, standing in a forest alone. Kisame, you were supposed to defeat the girl. How did she get past you? Naruto heard Itachi's voice ask coldly. How was I supposed to know that brat could use that technique? I didn't even recognize it. Kisame replied. Naruto realized he was seeing the world through Itachi's eyes. But no sooner had this thought occurred than he felt someone's awareness shift to him. Kisame, be quiet. Someone is here, Itachi hissed. Kisame instantly went into a defensive stance, drawing his Samahata. Where? In my head. Kisame stared, and Naruto flared his Kaigen brilliantly, trying to shut down the connection. Itachi closed his eyes and turned his Sharingan inwards. Naruto saw an image of Itachi appear in the darkness of Itachi's eyelids. "Get out of my head!" he roared. Naruto reeled back from the psychic blow, feeling the world swirling around him. The Mangekyo painting began to bubble and Naruto willed it into the chest as Itachi continued to psychically assault him. Hammer after hammer slammed into Naruto's body, and just when he felt that he would perish, Insanity opened the door. Insanity moved quickly, dodging forward in front of Naruto and forming a seal with his hands. Yobiokosu. Naruto felt his connection with his mind fray, and an image of the outside world where his body was overlapped his vision. Insanity took the box from his hands, and he disappeared. Naruto awoke abruptly. He felt pressure on his abdomen and immediately pushed away, fearing an attack. This would normally have been fine, if Kakashi had not been standing on top of the Konoha wall talking the Anbu officers there into letting him in at night. Of course, the fact that this was occurring meant that Naruto was propelled off Kakashi's unsuspecting shoulder, and hurled into the village. A short distance later, inertia lost to gravity, and Naruto plummeted. Inertia called for a rematch, but nature denied it. Thus, Naruto kept falling. "Ah, gravity, you fickle," Naruto began. "The wonderful thing about gravity is the fact that it keeps everything neatly on the ground." This fact was highly unfortunate for Naruto, who was currently hurtling downwards from several hundred feet to the hard, unforgiving pavement below. Naruto didn't know any jutsu that could counteract a very nasty fall, and he felt that his sudden awakening had surprised the three nin enough that there was no one dashing in pursuit who would beat cursed gravity to the punch. Yeah, things didn't look so hot. Naruto felt pressure building in the back of his head as he sent a wave of chakra flowing through it. The Kaigen burst into life, flaring brilliant colors onto the too close ground. Naruto didn't know how much this would help, but being able to see how truly he was going to die from a broken neck didn't help much. Then, it all stopped. Naruto blinked, or rather, tried to, but nothing happened. "Listen very closely, Gaki. I've just used the Kaigen to accelerate your mind to 100,000 times its normal speed. I can't hold this for very long with destroying your brain. I'm going to force the ability to mold wind chakra into your brain. When this happens, you must push all the chakra in your body downwards." Naruto nodded inwardly, then felt time return to normal. His brain felt like a bed of hot coals, and had he not fixed the thought in his mind, he would have completely forgotten to obey the Kyuubi's words. Chakra erupted from Naruto, spiraling downwards into a torrent of wind, hiding him from the eyes of the people above. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.